O YouTube Music Premium
has an official company, and we all walked in and we talked about
look cooler. This is his blueprint. During college, you're drawing literally in a trailer, trying to perfect your skill set from 10 o'clock till 2 in the morning or whatever it was. What exactly does that involve?
I bought comic books at 16 and I was smitten by the style, right? Up to that point, I'd never bought comic books and I went, wow. So I had been the incessant doodler since I was 5, the classic best artist in the class kid. I was always that kid. There was no focus, it was just random doodling in probably 100 different styles. And then when I saw the comic books, I went, I'm gonna teach myself this. So I fell in love with comic books, I bought them by the hordes, and I just started doing it. The process was this simple. For a week, I would just draw the forearm. That's all I did. I wasn't trying to draw Superman, I was just trying to draw his forearm. The next week, I would do hands. It was almost a jigsaw puzzle. And I was just trying to learn anatomy one piece at a time so that I could become semi-functional at it, so that at some point you could start twisting the body and moving it around and doing all the things that make comic books interesting. So for me, when I was in college, there's 2 things I used to draw. Some of the classic superhero, the Supermans and the Batmans and the Spider-Mans, and X-Men was popular back then. But the ones that I used to draw just equally as much were the characters that were the unknowns, because they were the books that I thought I had a legitimate chance for. You're never gonna replace the all-star. Who you may replace is the one that's on the bubble athlete, right? So there are lots of books that I would open up in college and going, wow, like the eyes look crooked to me, the anatomy was, I can draw crooked eyes and bad anatomy. So why don't I draw that character and send it to that editor, and maybe he might go, yeah, he's just as bad as this other guy, and give me a chance. And after 2.5 years of doing that, over 700 samples, over 300 rejections, and at some point people should have been asking Todd, at what point were you going to actually stop being delusional? How many no's before it's real that the answer is you're not really good? But I was determined after 300 that I was like, I'll show them all. I just ended up getting a job because I diluted every editor at every company every month, and I think they just called uncle. We keep getting 10, 20 of these packages every month from this kid. Would somebody here, would one editor give him a job so we get 1 package from this kid instead of 20? And I think I just wore him out. I think from a distance, I wore him out.
There's a certain amount of, meticulousness and tenacity that it takes.
Delusion and immaturity. Those are fine lines.
Okay.
Let me just say, those are fine lines.
But where's that coming from?
I don't know. I'm just taught. I don't really sort of analyze myself against anybody else. Some of the stuff that I've gotten credit for in my career, I don't know why they're giving me credit for it, because anybody else could have done it decades earlier.
Spider-Man, when you came on, was very much still stuck in the sort of John Romita mold of the 1970s. You came and you made Peter look, contemporary. You made Mary Jane look contemporary.
Right. Every artist before me for the previous 20 years could have. I was just going, hey, it's 1990, let's make it look like it's 1990. Oh my gosh, Todd, you're a genius, right? What? For making it look like today? Okay, I'll take the street cred, but I don't get it. Let's give you an example. Steve Jobs, right? He took everything that pre-existed and he made it sexier, and he made it prettier, and he made it sort of fun to be with. What did the iPhone do? It dialed. Every other phone did, right? It took text. Every other phone did. He goes, yeah, but when you text and you write, you don't touch buttons, you touch the glass. Oh my gosh. And that was it. That was his genius. He put sexy into it. So now I do those moves. And all of a sudden, I don't invent anything new. I just put sexy in it. And you get a lot of credit. So I got to a point where I didn't really care if the editors got mad at me, and they were. They wanted me to stop everything. Why? Because it was their status quo. He was everywhere. He was their stamp. And then here comes this little Canadian kid and he starts messing with it. And I was in multiple meetings with the editor-in-chief and they pointed fingers at me more than once saying, stop it, stop it. Stop making his eyes so big on Spider-Man. Stop making his costume so dark. Stop putting him out, jumping out of panels. Then he goes, stop that spaghetti webbing, right? And it was a glowing moment because I didn't have a name at that point. I went, wow, cool. He just, in his anger, gave me the name of something that he doesn't want me to do.
88, you do Batman Year One, those covers, and all of a sudden,
And the Hulk was starting about that time.
And the Hulk, and there's a huge shift there, and you see the capes get bigger and flowier and more dynamic looking. People start popping out of the panels.
My degree is in graphic design, right? My college degree. So I was applying some of that onto the pages. Why? Because I knew I was an average to below average artist. So if you look at those early Infinity, I was just getting you to look at sort of this glitzy stuff, the paneling layouts, hoping you weren't actually looking at the drawings and going, he's not very good, he's not very good. And I was hoping that over time, I would then get better and I wouldn't have to rely on the glitz. And then when I get over to Marvel, they were in this period where they're going, we don't want any glitz. And they go, can you just do like a grid page that's basically 2, 2, and 2? So what I needed to show them was, can I handle a deadline? Let me just tell any person who ever wants to break into our industry, deadlines are goal number one. So if you're mediocre and you can hit deadlines, you will have a long career. And so to me, I was trying to show them that I could draw fast. So I go, sure, I'll make it boring, but I'll do it fast. And they were going, wow, he's not the best kid here, but he's quick. And he's got a little bit that's something there. And then once they gave me the job and they weren't looking, I started then pushing back and bringing in some of the glitz and doing this and doing this and doing this. And it was some of the stuff that eventually got me in trouble on Spider-Man. By the time I ended up getting into that meeting with the editor-in-chief for the 5th time, you know, I was able to just go, Tom, you hired me for one goal, to sell comic books. That's what your business is. You sell comic books. I sell more comic books than anybody you employ. Why are we having this conversation? What do you care what it looks like? What they were doing is they were taking a personal affront that because I was changing their status quo, I must have been doing it because I thought what they were doing was wrong. Never. That would never cross my mind ever. I was doing it because I needed to do something different to survive as a young artist, and I was doing it different because being an artist or a novelist or whatever, it's a lonely occupation. And if you can't get through 12 hours a day with what it is your work is, you're going to drive yourself insane. So who was I entertaining every day? I got to tell you, me. So I was going, well, wouldn't it be cool if Spider-Man looked like this? Wouldn't it be cool if Batman's cape looked like this? And I was lucky enough that there was enough people out in the world that had the same attitude going, yeah, that does look cool, Todd. And so they were buying into my style. What
is your financial aspiration for this career as a comic book artist? What are you thinking is the sky, you know, the limit?
80,000. That was it. I drew a line in the sand, and I go, if I ever make $80,000, I will never ask or want for more. Just so everybody's clear, I'm in business for only one reason: to drive my art, to drive my ideas. And really what it takes isn't the idea. Lots of people have great ideas. It's the money and the time and the gumption to do it. And so I taught myself business as a second language. I consider myself to be bilingual. I'm an artist and I can talk business. So you want to put me in with bankers? I'm good. I'm good. I can talk their language. They think I'm actually a businessman who's a quasi-artist. Here's the driving point. You can either go, I want to get in business because I want to make $1 million. And I've met plenty of those people. I think they reverse engineer. They go, I want to be rich. What do I got to do? Oh, I got to come up with a good idea. What's my good idea? I think it's wrong. Come up with the good idea, do the thing that you like, put it out there. And if it is of quality and people like it, the byproduct is cash. And you get into it that way. Here's why the business matters. Because if I can maintain a certain level of success, not because I care all that much, but it allows me to walk into rooms and pitch more ideas and ask for their ideas so that I can use them in my toys, because I'll use their movie ideas and bring them in, or their video games or their TV show, and bring them in. And there's only one way they're going to say yes to any of it. What you have to be able to do is walk in there and say, look, here's what happened on the last 3 things we did. boom, boom, boom. Do you think that the same momentum will be here? If you do, let's go. And they make these quick calculuses and they go, Todd, sit down, let's have a talk. And I go, good, I got him where I want, which is I get to now talk about art. And as long as I have a certain level of business success, they will allow me to get up every day and do art. And that's the victory.
In half a decade, McFarlane had become the most popular artist the genre had ever seen. But rather than stay in pocket, he bet on himself and went independent, launching his own imprint, Image Comics, and his own character, Spawn.
This is our very first meeting of Image Comics as an official company. And we all walked in and we talked about what books we were gonna then publish. I walked in the door saying, hey, there's this character called Spawn I did when I was 16, and I want to pull him out, and here's sort of all the pieces I've got. Has anybody got anything to add to it? So that's it. 25 years ago, that was the start of it right there.
In 1992, you had an incredibly successful run on Amazing. You get to the end of this and you decide that you want to go out on your own and completely disrupt the industry. That comes from a place of wanting control, not a place of feeling undercompensated?
I started running around trying to ask people if they wanted to start a union. I was Norma Ray. My attitude was, if we stop drawing, they got nothing to sell. So we have power. So what ended up happening is I talked to a couple of people who then in the future become my partners. The 7 of us accounted for 44 of the top 50 selling books of 1991 out of 8,000 books that were printed. We did 44 of the top 50. That's who was leaving. We were some of the elite guys at that point. We didn't go there to negotiate, to demand anything. We just went to say, we're leaving, here's why. And oh, by the way, if it was us, I'd do something about it, because how do you know you're not gonna get another 7 creative people next week and the week after and the week after? And then we went over to DC, we just basically gave them the same conversation. We're not here to work for you either. We just thought it was worth repeating because you guys have a bunch of creative people. And we left, and that was it. That was the beginning of it.
In those first 2 or 3 years, were there behind the scenes machinations made by these big players to try to negatively affect the success of Image?
Yes.
Like what kind of stuff?
We would hire some of the kids to do books, and then Marvel would come along and go, hey, how would you like to draw Iron Man for us? So they would pick off our roster and go. And then they just cash whipped a couple of my partners. So all of a sudden, a couple of the founders of Image are doing work at Marvel. I probably have had, just myself in my studio, 20 people who I found off the streets, gave them a big chance, and then Marvel came along in a year or 2 and went and took them. I don't put anybody under contract. Right? So I was like, if you don't want to be working for me, I don't want to force you to work for me. And Marvel and DC got into this place where they started putting everybody under contract because they didn't want them coming back to some of the independents, especially to us.
What gave you the feeling of security that you felt like, you know what, like financially, I'm in a place,
right?
My career-wise, I'm in a place, I can walk away from the biggest company in the space and I have no plan.
Right. Here's the math. Out of 100% of the Spider-Man pie, or any Marvel comic book pie, we were getting 4%. Okay, so okay, 4%. So that meant that we could now sell 1/25th the amount of books, 1/25th. But since we were getting 100% of the 1/25th, it would equal financially the same 4%. So we could get killed in sales and it not take any kind of a hit financially, and we had total creative freedom. That's a win. And guess what happened? It didn't go from here to 1/25th. It went from here, and it actually went up. It went up, and we got 100% of it.
How long did it take the 7 of you artists to hammer out the business terms of this sort of cooperative that you had created?
Oh, 6 seconds. Here's how it works. Image comic books in 1992 and Image comic books in the year 2017, right, doesn't own anything. Just so we're clear. Image owns 0. Not only is it the best deal in comic books, it is the best deal in entertainment, period. Nobody gives you that deal. So why are we successful now 25 years later? Because we're letting people basically own their own ideas and their properties. That's why. We've created a haven for them.
Image comes out the gate. Over the next, say, 3 or 4 years, there's a splintering, and the levels of success start to become stratified. What is going on internally during that?
Okay, so here's what it is. So you now have 7 personalities, wired 7 different ways, and they all have to deal with this giant success in any way they see fit. So what happened? Some people folded. Some people sort of went in the field position. Some people tried to expand too quick. And again, remember, we were trying to learn how to be businessmen. And now you're going, so how does this all work? I am telling you, we took kids who were making 30 grand and they do a book for us and we were handing them a check on their first book, $500,000, right? Again, over 15 years worth of income for one book.
For one issue or one?
One issue. And then couldn't get them on the phone. Why? They're in the Bahamas. They've got a bicycle. They've got a motorbike. They're like, what are you talking about? They just got 15 years of income. They're 23 years old and they're off to the races. And we don't have any power in our system to tell them to get back to the drawing board and write and draw and get the comic books out. We don't have that power. Why? Because we don't have any ownership. And Hollywood was coming. Why? Because we now owned our own IPs. And since we own our own IPs, people now had to come to us. And so now we were taking meetings and stuff. And every time you take a meeting, that's hours away from the board.
Drawing comics is incredibly physically taxing. And you're now making millions of dollars per month as an artist. Is it hard for you to sort of keep yourself in that zone of like, I'm gonna go spend 10 hours a day by myself working?
What drove me was I knew that for longevity, to have any kind of meaningful impact beyond just the first year, the second year, there was gonna have to be some sustainability. So for me, I made a pact with myself. I said, I'm not gonna do any other book other than Spawn for at least 50 issues. I'm not gonna think about doing a miniseries, a spin-off character, I wanna establish Spawn for 50 issues, get them cemented into the psyche of Americana comic book buyers, and then I'll worry about the other one. In its simplest form, it's just the 3 Little Pigs story. You can build it out of straw, out of wood, or out of bricks. And it's harder to build it out of bricks and it takes a little bit longer, but it will sustain itself a lot longer. I was just the pig building the brick house. When we draw on 10 by 15 pieces of paper with a little bit of border. This gray was because it had the lettering on it, so that's why you even have like the tape.
That's an acetate, or like an overlay kind of thing?
That's exactly it. Here's, me putting a note saying, make sure that the color's right or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. You have to draw debris, you have to put doors. There's a lot of boring stuff you have to draw that most people, don't really pay attention to because they want the big sexy page, right?
One of the things about Spawn that I think is arguably one of the most interesting is that he's an African-American character. In the history of comics, there are not very many African-American characters that have sold, particularly in that period in the early 90s, that were selling on the level that you were selling, say, Spider-Man or Jim was selling X-Men, right?
Right.
At any point, did that cross your mind as potentially a gamble in and of itself?
No, maybe in hindsight it should have, but it wasn't. And here was the thinking and the rationale to it. Spider-Man's dressed from head to toe. Yet we always talked to him, and we always spoke to him, and we always wrote the stories, assuming he was a white dude. Why? He's covered from head to toe. I don't see 1 ounce of flesh. So Spawn was always clothed from head to toe. I just wanted to make him a hero who just happened to be a minority. And could I sell that to white people? And I had those days where I was at conventions. I'm sitting in Texas, and I got 2 good old boys in front of me. And they're going, Todd, that's Spawn. He's my favorite hero of all time. And I go, you remember that's a black man. And they catch themselves. Because I took it away so early in the game that they were just like, oh, he's cool. His costume's cool. He does cool stuff. He's kind of heroic. God, yeah, that's right. I forgot. And by the way, who's Spawn? He's essentially Todd. He's me. If I got hit by a bolt of lightning, what would I do? I'd come back for the love of my life. It's no accident. accident that the person in the comic book is Wanda, that's the name of my wife, right? And the things that he was doing in the first 5, 6 issues, it wasn't an accident that he killed Billy Kincaid, the pedophile. You push me far enough, I'd do the same thing. If Batman can't stop him enough times, if the system can't stop him enough times, if after 10 escapes, the pedophile's still on the street, I bet you me and 2 other dads will just pay that guy a visit and he may disappear someplace. Because if the system can't stop that guy from hurting the children, I will stop him from hurting the children. Done.
Despite all his success, even McFarlane's outsized talent couldn't supersede the implosion of the comic book market. So rather than go down with the ship, he diversified his bonds, bringing Spawn to Hollywood and launching McFarlane Toys.
So this is the prototype, and this is actually what came out of the package.
Oh, wow.
Right? So as you can see, and the reason we would sculpt this size, which is why you've got all these big ones in here, is because the bigger something is, the more dexterity you have with the clay. We would take both of these versions to the toy fair and say, our prototype will look like our finished product. Because other companies would say that, but they wouldn't deliver. When I first started, they went, sure, young man. And I had to actually start it showing to them.
At the outset of Image, the entire industry is in its zenith. It's a boom, unlike anything that the comic industry had ever seen. During the course of the 90s, though, that ebbs dramatically. How does that affect your business?
It's not an accident that I started a toy company, and then I started doing some more stuff in Hollywood, and I started branching out in other places, because the thought was, if the comic industry wanted to self-implode and wanted to commit sort of business suicide, then I was gonna create a plan that was gonna at least insulate me somewhat so that I could survive this, because I wasn't gonna go down with this ship. I started other corporations, and I started other businesses, spreading the brand, spreading the artwork, spreading my ideas, so that, again, the chances of all those different areas going down at the same time was highly unlikely.
What was the moment that you looked at the toy industry and said, I can be disruptive in this industry just like I was in comics?
It was this simple. I walked down the aisles of action figures, and I went, I don't get why they can't look cooler. And so at some point, I went, hey, you know what? I want to make Spawn toys. I couldn't make a deal, and all the, Hasbros and Mattels and Jacks and whoever it was, they all came and wanted the Spawn toys, and I didn't sell it to them. Why? Because I go, guys, here's what I think. I've got a non-traditional character. I think we need to make non-traditional sculpts, and we need to sell it in non-traditional places. And they couldn't get their head wrapped around it. They're $1 billion model, so they're going, little boy, we know how to make this work. We make billions. They were going to put me next to Disney product in the same stores, selling it the same way, was going to be a failure, because it wouldn't resonate with that buying crowd. We were going to have to do something different. And then when it didn't work, they were going to hand me my brand back, and it was going to be broken. So I said, no, I'll start my own toy company then. So all of a sudden, I come along, I put some cool, arty toys out, and it was a shock to the system. And they're going, what? And I remember they're going, Hasbro people were going, you can't make that toy and sell it for $1 more and sell, who's going to buy, toys are $5.99, Todd. You can't sell a $6.99 toy. Of course you can. Here's how you do it. You give them $6.99 worth of value. That's simple. The price wasn't relevant. They just were in their little mindset. So it gave a break for me. So I started doing stuff, and we start winning awards, doing lots of detail. Anybody could have painted their toys like I did. There was nothing that prevented any company for the last 50 years prior to my entry that stopped anybody from painting them, sculpting them, or designing them the same way. And then we won dozens of awards on our sports figures. As they're handing me the award, they're going, Todd, this is because you make the greatest sports figures of all time, and this is great. What is your secret? How do you make them so real? And I give them the answer, and I will give you the secret. We use a technology, if you can't understand what I'm about to say, you can go to Google and you can look it up. It's called a camera. And if you take a camera and you push a button, it gives you a photo. And if you take the photo and you don't stop manipulating your clay till it looks exactly like the photo, it looks exactly like it. So the question is not, how did you make it look like the photo? The question is, how did they not? For decades, we were using photo reference. You're a genius. We're gonna give you awards. Oh my gosh. And I'm going, wow, really? All I've done is just made stuff that already exists look sexier. I've never invented anything. So why didn't anybody else do it? I don't know, go ask them.
So when you start McFarlane Toys, do you put up all the money yourself?
Sure.
Was that a big gamble relative
No.
to your personal fortune at that point?
No. Anybody who ever tells you don't spend your own money is somebody who's never spent their own money. I'm going to tell you the opposite. Always spend your own money, because then nobody gets to tell you a single damn thing. If it failed, then I go back and I'm kind of making 80,000. I'm back to my red line again, right? You're under the precept that all this matters, right? It only matters so I can bring the art. This is why I can never lose a negotiation, because they can never take anything of value from me. There's only a couple things that have value to me. My wife and my kids. And nobody's ever threatened any of them in a negotiation. They've threatened to take away contracts and money and market shares and licenses. Ouch, wow. I can replicate all of those in 10 seconds. I don't care. So was it a risk? No, because at some point you go, nobody's making cool toys. I guess I'll just have to go and see how hard it is.
How quickly did that business take off?
O YouTube Music Premium permite que você tenha controle total.
People, the young kids at business school, and I go, besides some tenacity and hard work and all those other things you've heard, dumb luck must be a semi-regular friend, right? You must have a little bit of dumb luck. So let's go to the dumb luck moment. I go to New York Toy Fair. This is where you go and you show all your toys, and somebody comes in and they decide where they're gonna buy your toy. Mattel has an entire building 12 stories high. Hasbro has an entire building 14 stories high. It's massive. I'm in a building that's 10 stories high on one floor in one room. There's 20 of us. My space was 5 feet by 5 feet. And there was somebody, I was like being at a swap meet, right? There was somebody next to me here, next to me here, next to me here. I didn't even have a prototype. This is how dumb I was. I didn't even have a prototype. I had drawings that I cut out and I put in packaging and I had them up there, right? And then the moment, my first toy fair, the door opens up and the buyer from Toys R Us comes in. Now remember, we're going back to 1994. At that point, Toys R Us was the biggest toy buyer. Walmart was soon to crush them, but not at that moment. Toys R Us was the god. The Toys R Us buyer opens the door, and there's a hush. And he steps in with his little young aide standing next to him, and everybody in the 5x5s stands up to attention, just like the general came into the army barracks. And I'm looking going, what, who's that? They're going, that's the Toys R Us buyer. I'm going, oh, okay, cool. And he walks, dook, 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 dook. And as he walks, if he doesn't stop at your booth, he's not buying your stuff. As he walked by them, they were going, And I'm going, oh, I could just see the depression as he walked by. And they walk and they walk, and he stops in front of my booth. And did he love my stuff? Of course he didn't. He didn't even know who the hell I was. Here's the dumb luck. His assistant, who was 21, who was a Image Comics fan, sits there and goes, boss, this is the guy I was talking to you about. He's coming out with toys with this thing that's at the top of the charts, blah, 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 blah. And the buyer looked at me and went, what's the price? I told him, can you get it out by this date? Of course I can. I didn't have no idea. Of course I can, right? Always say yes to any answer, right? And worry about figuring it out later. Of course I can. And he goes, good, you do that, I'll put it in all my stores. I'll go store-wide with you. Yes, sir. And we delivered. We delivered it. It sold and whatever else. But I got store-wide. I got store-wide at the biggest one with a cardboard cutout, right? It usually doesn't work that way. So a little bit of dumb luck, but the dumb luck comes because of the body of work and the success I had at those other ventures. So that's where the success matters, because the prior success allowed that kid with a straight face to say to his boss, you should look at this. These three are the top 3 home run balls in Major League history right here. 66, 70, 73. The reason I bought it, I was trying to get into the sports toys. They wouldn't let me come in. They're going, who the hell are you? It was my ante into the game. They gave me a meeting. They go, oh, he loves sports. He's spending a lot of money, must be successful. He's got toys, bring him in. And they went, you want to do sports? Yeah, it looks like you're successful, boom. And so I've said to people, you spend $3 million on a ball, but over the course of 20 years, you make 30 million selling sports toys. You back out your 3, you're still up.
So 2 or 3 years into Image, the entire industry starts to wane a little bit. You start to diversify your portfolio. You start the toy business. The other big thing that you do is start stepping into Hollywood and pretty much simultaneously co-develop the Spawn cartoon with HBO and the live action.
Right.
Take me through that process.
Okay, so here was the thought process. I create a brand, the brand becomes Spawn, right? So Spawn just becomes the beginning of it. He becomes the start of a foundation. I now need pillars on the foundation. And the pillars to me were toys, video games, TVs, movies. If I could somehow find those 4 pillars, you can stack a skyscraper on a good foundation. And so I started, I couldn't find anybody to do what I wanted with the toys. I started that. The video games, we started making video games. I made those deals. And then we ended up making the deal for New Line Cinema for the live action, and very quickly did the animation at HBO that lasted the 3 years. So I was able to quickly go boom, 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 boom. Now, how? I'm not smarter than anybody else. The book was selling. And when people now in these places were looking at sales charts, they were seeing some of these Image books, mine specifically, Spawn, ahead of characters like Spider-Man and Batman and Captain America and Superman. So they were making these sort of evaluations. Oh, it must be bigger and more popular than Superman. Not really, because it's sort of brand new and you don't really know what it is. But if you want to come and make an offer and help me plant one of these foundations, then God bless you. And I was able to do that.
So with the toys, you were incredibly hands-on. You took it, no one could match the kind of quality that you were looking for your brand, so you took it on yourself.
I owned that.
But with the movies and the TV,
right,
you had to partner with other people. How was that?
It was okay, because again, look at everything you do, you just go through the sort of the pros and cons of all of it, right? And there's everything from I'm going to do it all myself, spend all my own money and to heck with everybody, to I'm going to give it away and I'm going to let somebody do it and I don't have any input, and then everything in between. Can I put myself in a position, i.e., let's say the HBO animation, that the deal was I'm in charge, you know, but I've never done any animation, but that's the deal, right? And so they basically let a newbie animator be in charge of the animation of it. Okay, if you let me do that, I'll surround myself with good people and we'll just figure this thing out, because I'm gonna have 400 years of experience around me and they're just gonna teach me, and I'm a quick study, right? I'll pick it up on the fly. But at the end of the day, I get to make some of the creative decisions, not just everybody up in the executive suite.
So how are you splitting your time at this point between all of these different endeavors?
Even though I limited myself on being distracted by the number of books I was doing, I still was getting distracted by trying to put those foundations. And I was trying as good as I could to put out Image, but I wasn't doing it on quite as steady a monthly process as I should have, relative to what I was doing at that point on Spider-Man. In the toy business, just trying to figure out that you can't mess around with deadlines, because when you promise toys to big companies like Walmart and Toys R Us and Kmart back then and Target and these types of stores, you get punished if you don't deliver product. Why? Because they've cleared space and a shelf for you, and if there's no product, they're losing money. So you can't not do what you sort of set out to do. So I got punished in a couple of these things, and went, wow. And once you feel pain, or you get close to seeing some of these businesses maybe start to wobble, it sobers you up very quickly. In hindsight, time should teach you something, and what time should teach you is where the mistakes and the potholes are. Over time, I found out I'm a 5-ball juggler. And what that means is every juggler has a max number. And if I don't care if you've seen these guys on stage in Vegas, they can juggle 20 balls. Even them, they have a max number. And if you throw one more ball than they can handle, guess what happens? Every ball falls to the ground. So over time, I thought I could juggle more than I could, and they started falling, and I paid the price on everything. Any new opportunity comes, I must put one of the balls down and then bring in the new opportunity. So I never go beyond 5.
The animated series with HBO was very well received and, you know, in many circles seen as ahead of its time. The live action film, less so.
Yeah.
It was critically sort of panned, and I know it made some money.
Yeah.
You know, when you look back on that, where do you feel like it went wrong?
I'd call the live action a double, right? Obviously, it was far from a home run. It wasn't a failure. I mean, it made money, it did whatever. It wasn't a failure. I mean, it made money, it did whatever. We had a first-time producer, first-time director, first-time special effects guy. Was the first movie I was made. So you had a bunch of first-time people on a movie trying to do the best that we could. I thought that we tried to do too much and put too much in it, and we ran out of time on it. And so there's still parts in there that make me queasy because they look unfinished to me. From a story point of view, I didn't have that much impact on the story. I wouldn't have put a boy and a dog in it. I think that makes it juvenile. I think the reason that the HBO worked a lot better was we just went straight into R, and we just went, even though it's animation, I don't know if you remember, but it had every single disclaimer that there was. Mm-hmm. I think there was only 5 or something. We had all 5. We were the first show to have all 5. As an animated show, I was quite proud. Because we just say, and I had way more impact on that show with HBO, that we were gonna go into this mature, sophisticated, dark area. And I think Spawn lives better in that place. I don't think Spawn, especially now that he's 25 years old, I don't think Spawn lives in PG-13 land. I've said over and over and over when the next movie comes out, which it's coming, it's gonna be a dark R. It's gonna be a dark R-rated movie, because it's not a superhero, spandex type story that I'm trying to tell.
You took on Spider-Man at issue 298. At that point, he was the most blue chip legacy brand in the Marvel empire. Spawn is about to reach issue 300, which will tie the longest running independent comic in history.
Right.
And there's a young artist who's probably helping you on pencils now, for whom Spawn means to them what Spider-Man meant to you.
Right, yes.
Do you contemplate that ever?
It's at times, and it's a weird thing. I remember buying my first Spider-Man issue, it was issue 167. And then I was like, wow, and I thought it had been around forever. Since Spawn's 25 years old now, he's been published for 25 years, that there's somebody that's 24 who's never lived in this country and in a world that doesn't have Spawn in it. It's odd when you think about it intellectually, but given that you're still in the middle of the race, every day is just, nobody does me any favors. I just have to sort of work hard. You don't really think about it. Maybe someday I'll write my memoirs and I'll go, hey, I guess we made a mark. But you know what? I still think I got 30 more years to make the mark.
But you still write every issue of Spawn to this day.
Sure, I'm still one of the better artists at my company. Yep.
I'm sure that there are points where you're like running around, going to Hollywood, checking on the toys.
I know your question.
You could hire someone to do that.
Dude, here's what drives me. My goal in life is to outlast every one of my enemies. That will be the sweet revenge that I get. At this point in my career, after 30 years, I'm okay. I don't need to chase the money. So now I can just be fearless.
What gives you sort of more personal satisfaction at this point?
Here's the nirvana, right? I'm 56 years old, so I'll give you the 56-year-old nirvana right here. It's finding the space, doing it your way, and it works. And you go, wow, I actually got to have fun, and they're gonna pay me for it. It's a good day. And I've been able to play that trick now for decades. It's a good day. They're gonna pay you to have fun and do whatever it is that you come up with. I don't get to have a bad day, because whenever I have a bad day, I always have to ask the same question: who started it? That's that guy I shave with every day. That's me. So if it doesn't work, I don't get to bellyache to anybody. I'm going, cool. I'm willing to go into these marketplaces, because if it doesn't work I don't care. I don't have shareholders. I don't have to maximize profits every 90 days. I can just do crazy stuff, and sometimes the crazy works. Every day that I don't have to work for a corporation is a moral victory for me. And I've been doing it now for 30 years. And now I'll quit. I'll retire before I go back. So I'll never go back, and I'll quit a free man. So what started as me in a room by myself for 12 hours a day is now expanded to me employing anywhere between 100 and 200 people at any time. And I'm smart enough to find brilliant people that have skills that I don't have that make me look good every single day. And even though I'm 56 years old, I feel like I'm 10. I feel like I'm 12. I'm young again. I've got the enthusiasm. Today's a good day. I'm not letting adults get to me. When I've met people like Steven Spielberg or James Cameron or these types, that when you get them away, they turn into 12-year-old boys. I think it's the reason for their success, that they still have a boyish wonder buried inside that they have never, ever, ever lost. And we try as adults to basically lose that childishness out of it. Something to be said about immaturity.
É sério, pagar R$ 25,90 por mês em um app de streaming,
Not only is he multi-talented, but there are many facets about Todd that you're going to learn as we move along. For example, he's not only one of the top artist writers in our business, but he's also something of an entrepreneur. He's going into a new business where he's producing his own trading cards, which he'll tell you about later. He owns a comic book store, which is not a bad thing for a guy in the business to do. He's a baseball player. He used to play, and I think still does, with a Pac-10. I'm sure a lot of you know what that means. He explained to me it's 10 teams in the Pacific League. And on top of that, he's one of the most dazzling talents in the comic book business. And now, since I've given him that magnificent build-up, I'm sure that he'll be real nice to me and be an easy guest to interview. And without further ado, because I don't have much ado to spare, here he is, the one and only Todd McFarlane.
Hey, Stan.
Hiya, Todd.
Hey, you sound just like my mom.
Listen, Todd.
Yep.
What I want to know is, before we get to the heavy stuff, you look about 12 years old.
Thank
I know
you.
you're a little older than that. But what about your early years? What about before you started in comics? Because so many people have asked me, hearing I was going to do this video cassette, how did he get into it? What was he like as a kid? How did he learn to draw the way he does in such a short period of time?
Actually, I think that I'm probably different than most of the guys that I admired when I was growing up, in that I didn't start collecting my first comic book till I was 17. So I was probably grade 11 or 12. Most guys seem to, you know, have read comic books since they were 5. I mean, we all had comic books as a kid. It wasn't like going to be an occupation of mine. So at about 17, for some reason, at that point I was collecting trading cards, baseball cards, living down in Southern California. And one day, all of a sudden, I walked into a corner store, plunked down my $2 and came home with 6 comic books. And because I'm kind of a fanatical kid, within 2 weeks I was collecting every single comic book that was out on the stands. And it kind of gave me a focus to take my artwork. I'd always been doodling, and just like anybody else, and drawing since I was 5, I can remember, but I had no focus with it. And I think a lot of the kids out there, you know, that's one of the problems that they have. They can't seem to put themselves in a direction. But once I started collecting the books, all of a sudden I said, well, you start to read so many that some of them aren't that good, and you go, I think I could do a little bit better than this, and you start to get a bit cocky, and you're on your way.
So I guess one of the first things you need is some taste. You have to be able to know this stuff is good, this isn't that good, and I'm going to be influenced by the good stuff. I don't even think it's making that kind of judgment's pretty. I think you got to get cocky is what you got to do. I mean, because you got to think that you're better than a professional at that point. And if you don't, then there's no reason to do your samples. What I try to tell the kids is really, when you're going to do the samples, yeah, don't really look at the good guys all that much, because they break your heart, because they do things that mind boggle you. You know what I mean? So take the guys and try and redraw the stuff from the guys whose stuff you don't admire a lot of, because then it looks like, yeah, I'm better than that guy, I'm better than that guy, because if I'm redrawing Jack Kirby or Neil Adams or John Byrne stuff, I can't do that stuff, and I'm just going to get disappointed. So then actually what you're saying is the opposite of what I said, that you're better off looking at the guys who aren't that good, because that'll give you more confidence. You know you can do better than they can.
Right, exactly.
Of course, in your case, though, what about when you first started? Certainly when you were 17 or 15 or 14 or 11, you weren't better than these cartoonists then, but you must have known at some point you'd be able to be as good or better.
I think what ended up happening, I mean, the way that I taught myself, and I know I drive some of the older guys a little bit crazy, but you know, they say draw from life and go and look at the world and stuff. I tell the kids the opposite, you know, draw from comic books. And the reason is because the things that make comic books cool, in my opinion, are things like big laser guns, those monsters that are drooling and got big fangs on them, you know, guys that got capes that are 47 feet, like you can't see that in life. So, but those are the kind of things that visually make things entertaining to look at. So I always tell the kids, look at the comic books, but what I would do is I would just take like arms, and I draw arms for like a week till I kind of had it figured out what an arm looked like. Then the next week I'd try to teach myself how to draw kneecaps, and I just, after about 2.5 months of placing all the pieces together, I kind of had a body. And then after that point I had to like actually start to turn the body and try to do storytelling and go to the next level. So it was kind of a slow process for me.
Well, when you were drawing the arms and the bodies and so forth, where did you get them from? Did you take them from your own arm, or did you look at other drawings of arms, for example?
I mean, there's certain lines that are on comic books that you got to kind of place. I didn't really study muscle magazines, which a lot of guys do. And the reason is because I think that some of the guys that draw perfect can't really put the superheroes into certain poses that make them look dynamic. I mean, Jack Kirby, if he had put all the, you know, kneecaps in the right place, couldn't have done those great poses. You know, he needed to be able to warp the bodies around. But from my perspective, no, I watched, the one thing that I watched was teachers' hands. When I went to college, people used to talk and go like this. And the one word advice I had, they said, if you can draw great expressions of faces and great hands, the rest of the body doesn't really need to be there, because you can do a dramatic shot by going, you know, a guy gritting his teeth and going like this. That gives a lot of emotion. So I watch people's hands a lot, and that was about the only thing I was conscious about.
That's interesting, because I always used to feel the hands and the faces were absolutely the most important 2 elements to get excitement and interest and drama in a panel. And we used to say to the artists years ago that you've got to make your characters look excited, because if they don't look excited at what's happening in the story, how can you convince the reader that it is an exciting incident if the characters participating look calm. So we always try to make the hands tense and the faces wide-eyed and the mouths open. And sometimes you can get two artists drawing a strip, and this is something you're so great at. Every panel you do looks exciting, but you can take the same story and let one artist, for instance, if somebody is supposed to be frightened, a monster is coming into a room, and you could have the person like this, oh, there's a monster. Or you could draw her or him like this, ah, a monster. Well, which one would you want to read, you know, if you saw those two drawings? And usually you get that excitement with the hands and with the faces. But I think the body is kind of important too. You've got to know what to do with the shoulders.
Yeah, well, the thing is, most superhero guys don't stand like we stand. In fact, they wouldn't sit at the table.
Bite your tongue.
No, wait, you know, they wouldn't sit in a chair like this. They'd sit like this. Of course, they got the big bulging chest, and they'd, you know, so everything is melodramatic. That's what I try to teach the kids that show me their portfolios too, is overdo everything. I mean, like, keep knocking people over the head with the visuals, because, I mean, it is fiction, and people want to see something that's not real, I don't think, because otherwise they can read a novel or something like that. So you got to make it, and the scenes that are what we call pedestrian scenes, where, you know, John and Joe are talking out of costume, those ones, I always tell a kid, you can still make those look exciting the same way that Alfred Hitchcock used to make them look exciting. Instead of doing a shot straight at my face, you can come up through the glass table, you can do a silhouette of them, you can shoot through the window that maybe's got the pane that's in checkerboards or something. You can do a dramatic down shot. If Aunt May's pouring coffee, that's a pretty bland, stupid panel, but I could make that, I think, somewhat more visual to look at by either doing a close-up of her eye as the smoke or the steam's coming billowing out of the cup of coffee. I could show her reflection in a stainless steel canister that she's pouring. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, and I try to get the kids to think of the pedestrian panels a lot more, because then the action comes easy. If you can make somebody pouring coffee look good, then a guy getting blasted through a wall with a laser gun is a piece of cake, I guarantee.
Todd, you're a real comic book natural, because what you say, I think, is so important, especially if anyone watching this has aspirations of being a comic book artist, or even a writer. You know, you've only got so many panels to tell the story, and if you have one dull panel on a page, you're really wasting about 1/6 of the page, and you're so right on, because anything can be made interesting. Somebody walking down the street, you say, what can you do with someone walking down the street? But as you mentioned, if you make it an angle shot looking up at them, maybe through some steam that's coming up from a grating or from a window. Gene Colan once did a panel, I'll never forget, of a fellow opening a door. He had opened the door, and all Gene drew was the hand holding the doorknob, but he did it in a certain perspective and with his light and shading. I mean, it was as interesting a panel as you can get. So it just depends on your point of view, and I suddenly realized this is not Stan Lee giving a lecture, so let's get right back to you. Let me ask you something else.
Okay.
How do you manage to mix your personal life and your professional life? I mean, you've just, I should have mentioned in your introduction, despite and besides all the other things you are, you're also quite a happily married man who is now a new father.
Yep.
And I think we're very lucky in that your wife, Wanda, and your daughter, Cyan, are here with us tonight, and I have a feeling the people watching this would probably like to meet them. Do you think you could talk them into coming up here?
We can do it. If not, then I know Grandma wants to see them too, so.
Here are Todd's lovely wife, Wanda, and his lovely daughter, Cyan. As if by magic, they've appeared. Hi, glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Now, let's see. Cyan, first of all, you've been absolutely wonderful about this. You've stayed there, and you haven't cried, and you've stayed awake, and I know you'd rather take a nap. And I'm not going to keep talking, because I know Todd wants to talk a lot about his wife and daughter. Go to it, buddy.
I think that one of the things that some of the people trying to break into comic books have to understand, you got to have a pretty understanding wife, I think. You know, and I hope other guys think that they also have the best wife, but I think I've got the best. She's stood by me for a lot of years. You were asking me about my work schedule. I've been able to, because of my success, been able to back away from it, but for a lot of years I had to put in those. And
those long hours.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, there's 7 days a week, you know, 80-hour weeks, week in, week out, and literally just come upstairs, get dinner, come downstairs, keep working. I mean, deadline. We've all had deadline problems, but it makes it a little bit easier when you have somebody there that is understanding about what you're doing, that's also encouraging along the way and knows that hopefully it's not going to be forever, but that it's a means to an end and whatever. So I think that not enough people actually introduce their wives or their girlfriends or family members that if it wasn't, I think, for my wife being there and helping me through a lot of tough times, I probably wouldn't be standing up here today talking to you.
I
because
know
she kept me
exactly what
going.
you mean.
So.
Yeah.
I think it depends on
it's
your.
great.
I think it depends on your approach to how you're going to break in the business. You were very driven, and so you were at it very hard for a very concentrated period of time, but not necessarily the only way you can do it. But it certainly worked out for
Yeah,
us.
like I said from the beginning, when I started collecting every comic book, I'm psychotic. When I put my nose down, I become obsessive with things. So.
Well, Wanda, what does it feel like? What does it feel like to be married to a guy who is that obsessive about something? And I might add, that's successful at it. I mean, it's a whole new career. You're in showbiz.
It is, yeah, and it's funny because where we live, people don't pay much attention.
Vancouver, right?
Right, Vancouver Island. People don't really pay much attention. There's the odd kid that's a collector, and they're very excited when they meet him, but it's such a different world when you go to a convention or something like this, but particularly a convention where there's hundreds of kids lined up, sometimes thousands, to see him, and I just look around and go, wow, this is very strange.
It's a good feeling, though.
It is
isn't
a great feeling to
How
see
does,
the people
how does
appreciate it.
Cyan react to all of this?
Well, this is brand new for her. She's just 6 weeks old today, actually.
I think
and
that's
so,
great.
So
But see, I'm already working on her because she could possibly be like, kids want to know whether there's going to be a Spidey baby. See, and this is why I bought this here, because then at any moment when she senses danger, see, then she could just come in here, the Spidey baby,
That's
she's ready
wonderful.
to go, and we're off. And
I
they're just-
wondered why you had her sticking to the wall when I first met her. That's terrific.
Well, I think we're getting hungry, so I think we'll leave you guys to the rest of your interview, but thank you for inviting me.
Hey, thanks
It's been
so
fun.
much for coming and
Okay.
kind of rounding this thing out. And it was great seeing you,
Okay,
Wanda. And
bye-bye.
Cyan, remember now, when we need a spider baby, who knows? Boy, when you realize that most artists need motivation, I'd say, Todd, that you have two of the greatest motivating factors I've ever seen there. You've got a lovely family,
Thank
and
you,
I
thank you.
congratulate you. Now, you mentioned Vancouver. You live in Vancouver, or more.
Since I broke into comic books, I've been living in small towns. My attitude is, I know a lot of guys that live in New York, and with Federal Express and those kind of courier services now, you can live literally any place on the planet, not just in North America. I feel that if you don't live near the hub, and they know you're going to come in every Tuesday at 12 o'clock, that if they go out of their way to FedEx you something or get on the phone call and make a long-distance phone call, they probably want you a little bit more. Because a guy who's coming in every day at noon, then they go, well, let's phone Todd or Bill or George or Fred to do this job, and if they all say no, then the guy who walks in at noon, we know he's coming in at noon, so he's our fifth choice. So I always figured that if you move away and they still kind of hunt you down, then that tells you something about, like, where you're standing and how much in demand you are amongst some of the other things.
And you can keep testing it. You can keep moving further and further to make sure. If ever you have any feeling of insecurity.
That was it. People go, why do you live on Vancouver Island? And because I live up in Canada off the West Coast, which is about as far away from New York as I can get. And to go any further, I'd have to go to Japan, because that's the next piece of land. But
I thought you were going to say that's the next plan I have.
Yeah, well, maybe. But I don't know. Like I said, people, for me, I've always worked in isolation. So I always figured that by working in isolation, I kind of sink and swim on my own. I'm not influenced by a lot of things that are in LA or New York, and I don't hear a lot of the styles and the gossip and the things that are happening. So I just kind of have to make it up myself. Some of it works, some of it doesn't, but so far it hasn't really come back to haunt me that I'm just going, well, I haven't seen anybody else's stuff because I haven't been up to the office. So, well, this would be cool if I did it this way. So in some respects, I think it's actually, it's made me think a lot more than if I had more creative input around me.
Every artist works differently, and every artist has a different opinion and a different philosophy about his work. Some of them like to be right in the hub. You're better off, you feel, further away. But what it really comes down to is the basic talent itself. And it's almost like when you build a better mousetrap, they say the world will beat a path to your door. I think if you've got the stuff, whether you're in Vancouver or Mars or right in the heart of New York, somehow you'll be discovered, it'll come out, and then you just work the way you're the happiest. But everybody is going to want you when you're really good. I mean, look at me. I could have had my choice of anybody up here. And I got to tell you one thing. It is so great working in the comic book business because so many of the guys are like a Todd McFarlane, where you don't feel you're working. I mean, it's fun. You're just with friends and people you admire and respect. And speaking of that, you had mentioned to me earlier before we started that John Romita had visited you in Vancouver. And Romita is John is one of my absolute all-time favorite people. Tell us a little about it.
John Romita's, maybe some of the people don't know, did a long body of work on Spider-Man with yourself. When I came into the office to pick up a new book and ended up getting offered a Spider-Man book.
He's the art director at Marvel
Right,
now.
he's now the art director, right? And he had laid down what I consider the definitive Spider-Man. I mean, Ditko had started it and did it the first...
Steve Ditko, the guy who started it.
Steve Ditko had done the artwork on the first 40 issues with you and kind of laid down kind of a quirky style, but it was actually John Romita who does the Spider-Man that I tell people is on pajamas and is on the towels and is on the bubblegum wrappers. You know, that definitive look. Well, my attitude has always been, well, if you're going to do something, you got to get notice. I don't care what it is. Even if it's bad notice, that's better than no notice at all. So they kind of wanted me to draw like John Romita, and I didn't want to do it because it's like becoming a painter and saying, well, I'm going to do like Michelangelo and Norman Rockwell. The best you can hope for is to be almost as good as Norman Rockwell. That's the best you can hope for. So I go, the only thing I can be is either almost as good as John Romita, or I can go out there and make a career for myself. Now, when you do those kind of things, you don't state those facts. It ends up looking like you're bucking the system somewhat, because it's like, oh my gosh, well, why is he changing this and this and this and this when we've done it a certain way? But it was more out of a respect to John, because I just go, I can't add nothing to his stuff. I couldn't add. So what I did is I go, well, I try to pick the best of what Steve Ditko did, which was that quirky, kind of funky style. And then I took what I thought John Romita brought to it, which was the pretty people, the great storytelling. I mean, everything was perfect on John's stuff. Kind of meld the two of them together and mix in like a 90s flair with it and kind of spit it back out on the page. And it seemed to work. I mean, I made a couple of cosmetic changes with the eyes and with hairdos. And
you made the eye spaces about 10 times bigger, the whites of the eyes.
But again, I mean, those are kind of things that when you get on a book, you have to kind of get into it and go, well, Spider-Man, I always felt that some of the guys at a certain point always made it Spider-Man, emphasis on man. And I know he's actually a man and stuff, but my attitude is quite the opposite. Once he throws on the costume, he doesn't have to be able to, his joints can bend, and you know what I mean? He didn't I put him in impossible
positions.
He played up
the spider part.
Right, so I do Spider-Man, and I put him in the positions that people go, a human being can't get into it. And I go, you're right, a human being can't, but it looks cool, you know? I mean, you turn the page, and it's like, wow, look at him hyper-extended here and triple-jointed there, and they got webbing all over the place. And it's not realistic, but it's a heck of a comic book shot.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Let me tell you, you said something that I think borders on being profound when you were mentioning that if you copy somebody else or try to work in someone else's style, the most you'll ever be is a good imitation or a good copy. And especially if a guy has his own style down so perfectly that you can't improve on it, all you can do is be similar or change it. But if you change it, if you do something that's your own individualistic style, that's really the way to succeed or to reach the top. And I really think that goes in every field. If you're an actor, you won't get anywhere by imitating a Robert De Niro or a Marlon Brando. You've got to get your own style and your own thing.
Right, well, I mean, something like okay, in John Romita, I went up there, and a couple of times he sat me down. And I always tell people, if you go up to Marvel or you go up to DC comic books, to talk to people like Dick Giordano and to John Romita, who've been around for years, and they don't tell you to draw. I rarely tell a kid to draw better, because if it was that simple, I'd walk into the office and they go draw like Michelangelo, Todd. And so I can't draw like Michelangelo, so I'm not going to tell a kid to go out there and draw better. What I can give them is the same advice that Dick Giordano and John Romita gave me, which is the technical side of it. This is how you do establishing shots. This is how you move characters in and out. This is how you do this. Maybe be on the lookout for these 5 points, and all of a sudden, when I walk out of there, I'm now aware, the next time I do that page, I'm now aware of 5 new things. If nobody ever tells you about it, you're not aware of it. So the more things that you can make people aware of, the better. Now, if they say the introduction is show the establishing shot of the outside of a house, that can be done 1,000 ways. A guy maybe who doesn't have quite that much talent or is young and whatever, he might just do a nice standard bland shot, but somebody else might shoot it through, let's say, a bunch of trees. There might even be a spider web in the trees, and then you can see the silhouette of the shack through. I mean, and I'm just going from, or, you know, a down shot in between, like birds fluttering around or whatever it is.
Well, as you were mentioning before, it's a case of taking something and being able to make it interesting.
Right.
And it depends on how you present it. And I think, again, that's one of the differences between a really top comic book artist and just a good artist. You know, there's an artist named Alex Raymond. You probably know his work. He used to do Flash Gordon, and he was wonderful. But then he did Secret Agent X9, I think, and he did Rip Kirby newspaper strips. They were the most beautifully drawn strips you could ever find anywhere. And he was an artist. All the artists used to use him for reference if they wanted to know the correct way to draw a hand or a figure or a smile or anything. But his work never, when he did Rip Kirby and Secret Agent X9, I think he did another, I've forgotten, it didn't really catch the fans. It didn't meet with their approval. Nobody got excited about it. It was so perfect and photographic and well drawn, but it had no excitement and no quality, which he did have when he did Flash Gordon.
Right. Well, even like Bern Hogarth, who did Tarzan, did the perfect Tarzan, and Tarzan was a beautiful. There's a lot of guys out there that you got to find your niche.
Perfect anatomy, and they do everything perfectly, but there's no excitement.
Yeah, and superhero comic books, like I said before, I think superhero comic books are over-exaggeration, melodramatic. Everything has got to be, the perfect stuff only works on the odd occasion, and otherwise everything else has got to be pompous and a lot of glitz and whatever. Now, it's up to the writer to throw interesting stories in there, make the characters interesting, but while you're making Aunt May or whoever interesting while she's pouring coffee, I don't care really what you're putting in verbally. All I know is that you got to bring across these 4 points of information so that the comic book will move. But I'm just not going to show you a headshot of her talking while you're making that information. I've got to make it visually interesting, like you're saying, whether it's a close-up of her pouring the coffee and her reflections in there, you can give me the information, but I still have to make it look visually. As a matter of fact, we could be doing a voiceover on it. Somebody might be talking about their past life, and I could be doing something completely different.
But you know, it's all part of your personality. Now, take you right now. You're sitting here and you're talking about whatever you're talking about. I've been paying no attention, so I don't know what it is. But you're doing it with expression, you're doing it with emotion, and you're actually doing it with a little bit of excitement. Now, I could be sitting here with some other guy who'd be saying, yes, well, I wake up early in the morning and I go to my board and I draw. And after 2 minutes, the audience would be asleep or they'd get their money back from the tape. Now, this tape, I guarantee, people are going to save it and it'll increase in value and it'll end up in the Smithsonian. But what I mean is it depends really on something inside of somebody, how much personality they have. And to me, it's all show business. Everything is entertainment, whether it's comic books or writing novels or being an actor or being a screenwriter or whatever it is. You've got to find a way to make it exciting, and I think you are one of the top people who have that ability to do it. And I was just wondering, how would you, well, I think you have explained it in a sense. Even if you take somebody pouring a cup of coffee, you'll find a way to make it exciting by the reflection of the cup or by the angle or the perspective, because you can't see it in a dull way. You know it's got to be exciting.
Right. Well, the one little story that I tell the kids that they seem to like is, and I usually do this when I'm at a convention or something, I got the whole crowd there, is my whole essence of what comic books is I could take a character like Thor, and I could make a poster of him picking his nose, and the kids would buy it. Now, I usually get like a little bit
I'd say it would be a collector's item.
Yeah, well, and they laugh, and they go, there's no way. I mean, he's picking his nose, there's no way you can do it. And the way you can do it is by doing all the things that make comic book interesting. Now, when I draw Thor does not stand there like you and I. Thor stands there, his legs would be bow-legged, his chest would be barreled out. In the one hand, he's got his hammer. He'd be holding his hammer, again, with a tight, clenched fist, so that his veins were rippling through his arm right here. I'd give him wings on his helmet that were fluttering in the wind, twisting and turning. He's got long hair like a girl. It would be coming over his face, blowing out
The
here.
wind has to be blowing.
Oh, the wind's got to be blowing.
And that cape has to be blowing.
And the cape would be all over the place. The hair would be all over the place. I'd have dust billowing up at his feet. And hidden in all that, he'd be sitting there with his with his left hand, getting that little booger there. And you want to know what? You wouldn't even know that he was picking his nose. So the point is, if I can make a guy picking his nose exciting, then I can make him slugging somebody easily exciting. So
It's a great story.
And those are the things that the kids out there that are trying to aspire into being artists have got to look at. They've got to make everything exciting, 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 and then people go, wow, 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 and hope that you get tagged up with a writer that also is going to make it so that it's a product that's not just glitzy artwork, that's also going to be a good read on top of it.
You know, I want to tell you, it's just my luck. I got a show like this, and I have to get a fella who won't say anything. It's like pulling teeth, dragging the words out of him, and I don't know how we're going to handle it. But look, you were talking about drawing, and we must have a lot of people watching this cassette right now and saying, all this talk, 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 why can't we see Todd draw something? Yeah. How does the guy draw? What does he look like? And I think it would be great. Now, we haven't practiced or rehearsed this. I have no idea how we're going to do it. Okay. But is there any way that we can get the camera on and get a piece of paper and something for you and actually let everybody see you do a drawing? Can we do that? Let's try it, okay? You want to get over to the board?
Yep.
Here we go.
Good.
Okay, Todd, why don't we come over here and let you do your thing?
My thing. Okay, one of the first things that I try to tell kids to do, this would just be the Todd McFarlane, how to do comic books, and then I'll get into some of the technical things. And one of the things is that if they say we got, let's say, Spider-Man swinging over the city, I've seen 100 times, now this isn't going to be that complicated, but I've seen 100 times done before. Here, we'll make Spider-Man here, the groin area. But then what they do is they put like a leg here, and they bend the leg here. Okay, it was a fine bend or whatever. And then he's holding the webbing up in here, and the other one maybe he's holding the webbing up in here, and he's got some nice little webbing going here. Now, the one thing I try to tell people is that we're drawn on 2 dimensions, and we've got to give the illusion of 3 dimensions. And I think that a lot of kids, the artists that they like the best, they probably don't even really know why they like them other than they draw cool capes and stuff. But one of the things is the good artists can usually take a figure like this and run the camera all around it and move it all over. The reason I don't like this, and it's good for the beginner who's trying to learn and put all the anatomy, is this is Spider-Man swinging over the city. I can get a sandwich board, 2 big pieces of plywood, and I can put one in front of him and one in back of him, and it wouldn't bug him. You know what I mean? I could put a big rubber band and he could still swing because there's no foreshortening, there's nothing else there. So one of the things that I like to get the kids to think about is to give as many planes as possible, since this is only 2-dimensional right here, we've got to make it 3-dimensional. So one of the things that I try to get the kids to think about is, if you're going to have somebody slugging somebody or swinging or whatever, but the first thing we'll do, let's say if I was going to draw back, here would be the collarbone, the top of the collarbone. This would be the back up in here, like this. Now, because let's say the Spidey emblem was here or whatever, we want to make the head off center, because if it's on center, when everything looks polite, then the picture looks way too polite. So if we can get a guy's head off the center of his body right up in here, then we've given the illusion now that his head is in front of this shoulder up in here. Now, if we're going to throw a foot, let's say we're going to throw a foot up in here, we'll put one, let's say we'll make a foot right here, and since we got to have the foot here, well, the only way we can get it back to his butt back here is if we bring it back up in here, and then his leg is going to go back down in here. We'd make his arm, let's say, come here, and as a matter of fact, let's even cut it in front of his face, and then kink his wrist here, and then kink all the fingers even. I mean, the fingers are like 3 or 4 planes in and of themselves. So in other words,
they don't teach kinking in school at the moment.
I know they don't, but the point that I'm trying to get at with kids, okay, then we'd have, let's say, a leg foreshortened back here, and here would be his foot, and then we'd have, let's say, the other arm holding some webbing back in here. Now, the point I'm trying to make, and I know this is rough for the kids, I can clean up a little bit later, is that if I put a hand in front of a face, I've given the illusion that there's this plane,
there's
but
depth.
There's depth in it, that his face is back here. Now, one arm's going this way, one arm's going this way. I've given 2 planes. kink the wrist. I've given 3, and I can get another 3 on the fingers and another 3 on this finger. I can give you 15 planes if I want to turn it a 45-degree angle right here. If I put the head off center and I put an arm back in here, I've got to hide part of the arm. So by shoving a hand directly at the camera that's real big and one back, or twisting the body, you've now given the illusion that this guy's warping all over the place. It becomes a tough thing, and part of it is I get paid to draw 10 hours a day, so you know, I mean, you get better and better and better. If you look at some of my early stuff, I wasn't able to do that. But one of the gimmicks that I try to tell kids is to literally just take two pieces of lines, or 2 drawings of lines, whatever. Okay, we'll go one's here and we'll go one here, and squeeze a body in there. Because if you can squeeze a body in there, then you can probably twist them at any way. So now I've got 2 lines here. I mean, even now I'm going to maybe put myself in a bad spot. But what I'll do here is we'll make this his kneecap right in here.
You'll need a lot of kinking for this one.
Oh, yeah, lots of kinking and lots of foreshortening. So then I can come down in here. I'll have his foot up in here. This other foot can come, this would be here. I'll maybe make his other foot hidden back in here. I'll have his body twisted over this way with one of his arms coming up over here. And then I draw his head up and over here. Here's a big eyeball, cool.
Oh,
and
I get it now.
And
That's
then I have
great.
maybe one of his arms up in here hidden. If he's got a belt, make the belt running off around his waist. If he's got a rope, make it going. If he's got a cape, even better. I mean, a cape's the easiest way to give action to something that's not happening. I can make a Batman or Superman, again, standing there doing nothing, but the cape's rippling all over.
You've got to have that wind blowing the cape
So there's an
dramatically.
illusion that actually he's standing there in the wind. So there's some dimension even with the wind and stuff like that. What I do, because the character I've been drawing, Spider-Man, doesn't have a cape, and I love guys with cape because that's the easiest gimmick. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to know anatomy, because what you do is you kind of put the cape over the leg. That's why Batman's easy to kind of draw, because you just cover the body through a couple
Anything
hands.
you're not good at drawing, you cover with the cape.
You hide it. Oh, yeah. So from the very beginning. But because he doesn't have a cape, what all I can do is do, let's say, a spider web. So if I'm going to do a spider web, I'm not just going to have this nice, pretty spider web. I'm going to have the spider web come here, hidden behind a leg, twisted upon itself, just like a rope, coming back up in here, and then maybe even wrapping back up and around him up in here. So now, even the illusion I've given of depth with the spider web helps to all the different ways that I've twisted and I've contorted the body. Another thing is that sometimes people, like you're saying, get too tied down with like the realism of what makes a comic book and stuff. Some people kind of, I get a lot of kids, as a matter of fact, and I've been able to, I guess, baffle them with my BS, and they call it a style now. Thank you, kids. But they go, wow, you put in so much detail. You do this, you do that. My detail doesn't amount to anything. It's not anything. And I always tell people, I don't care if you can draw a good building or a good car. You got to draw Superman first. So I've yet to have a kid run up to me going, Toddy, you draw the coolest 57 Buicks I've ever seen. No. They go, wow, that was a cool Spider-Man. That was a cool Superman. That was a cool Rutabaga guy. And if you can draw a good Buick 57 behind him and a good building and a good tree, all the better. But I've seen guys that can only draw good superheroes and can't draw a very good Buick 57, and they're still great artists.
Let me ask you about the webbing. Aren't you the first guy to make a work of art out of the webbing? I mean, to start making the webbing look as if it was three-dimensional?
I believe in giving credit where credit's due. I pulled the idea when I was collecting comic book. There was an obscure shot that was done years ago. They did a portfolio shot. An artist by the name of Michael Golden did a shot, and there was this one panel, and it's funny as it was, I saw that when I was maybe 18, and I broke into comic books when I was 24, that I saw that shot, and I go, if I ever break into comic books, and if I ever work for Marvel, and if I ever draw Spider-Man, I'm going to remember that.
Really? I didn't know
and by
that.
fluke, I ended up getting to draw Spider-Man. So again, I never forgot that. I got to remember like an elephant on a lot of things. So I pulled it out. Now, Michael Golden did the first version of it. The only thing that I can take credit for is that I popularized it. You know, I did it so much. I call it spaghetti webbing because Tom DeFalco, the editor of Marvel Comics, that's what he dubbed it one day when he didn't really like it. And he goes, I don't like those spaghetti webbings, so I'm going. So now I curse him by calling it spaghetti webbings and getting the kids to call it spaghetti webbings just to bug Tommy sometimes. But the reason I did what I did with it was that the old...
Why don't you just do a little of the webbing, because there may be some people watching that haven't seen it. And
Okay.
they wonder what we're talking about.
The old way they used to make it, if this was Spider-Man's hand here, and here's his finger, and here's his finger, and here's his thumb, and he's kind of squirting it out. The way they used to do it was just lines like this,
right.
and then they used to kind of put X's in it. And it worked for years and years and years, but the only thing about this is if I try to shoot that towards the camera, again, with the plane, all you get is bigger X's, you know, and I couldn't use it. So I go, oh, I got to come up with a way, and I remember the way that Michael Golden did it, that I can actually shoot it towards the camera and it doesn't lose what it's supposed to be. Now, I'm kind of psychotic again with the way that I do the webbing. If you actually look at one of my drawings, it's continued. There's one strand that literally continues from beginning to end. Most people probably don't follow it, but that's how come it's laborious. And what I would do is I'd come in here and I'd give it about 2 or 3 strands, and then I come in there with one single strand here and I'd wrap it. Again, by wrapping it in and out, I give illusion even to something as stupid and as trivial as the webbing. Then maybe I'd come in here and I'd maybe give it 2 or 3 ropes. And whenever you wrap something, it doesn't necessarily mean they're all up. I can give one down, one big, one small. I'd continue the webbing in between here, bring it down here again, and then bring this back around up like this, and so on and so on. Sometimes it takes me 2 hours just to do the webbing in one page, and I hate myself that I started doing this because I can't go back now, because if I don't, then the kids are going to say, you're getting lazy, you're getting lazy. But in a lot of terms, I think it's good, and one of the things I try to shy kids away from too is I go, I can draw 2 books, I could draw 3, I'm fast. I believe you should do 1 dynamite book instead of 3 average books, because in the long run it's going to pay off for you.
Couldn't agree with you more.
And what ends up happening is that people sometimes water themselves down, and so could I draw this a faster way? You darn right. So I could cross the lines. I could do this. I didn't even have to draw this. This is a heck of a lot faster, X. But I figured if I did something that's a little bit different, again, my career was budding. I had to let people notice me so that I get another job, is if I labor over this today, down the line, I think it will pay dividends down the line. A lot of people seem to be short-sighted on a lot of things. So,
how does it feel to know that someday in the future they'll talk of you as the man who popularized 3-dimensional perspective webbing? I mean, boy, that's a distinctive trait. Nobody else will have anything like that.
Well, I guess the one thing that would be nice about it is I wanted to do a body of work on Spider-Man, and I felt that Steve Ditko, who we were talking about earlier, and John Romita both were on the books long enough that they did a body of work, that it would be nice, if nothing else, that 25 years from now, when they throw out 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 names on Spider-Man, on the artistic side of it, that maybe my name might also be in there, because I added something to that character. You know what I mean?
Well, you certainly did.
That maybe something will be there that somebody can come along. On the downside, I hate to say it, Stan, on the downside is, because it becomes so popular, a lot of the people following now in the Spider-Man steps were they wanted me to draw like John Romita, and I said no, again, out of respect. If I was younger, I probably would have done it. But again, I was at that cocky stage going, no, I want to do it my way or the highway. That kids are now starting to come in there and starting to draw it their own way, and I'd like to caution kids, just because Todd did something popular or whoever else, do it your own way, because you might do something that might be 10 times more popular that nobody's thought of yet. And if you just keep emulating what's been down, you're never going to come up with that one that we go, oh, why didn't I think of that first?
I think that's probably the most important thing that we've been saying and you've been repeating during this particular show, and that is to do it their own way, whatever they do. Do it the best they can in their own style, because when you copy someone else, the best that you can be is a good copy.
Now, I'll go over couple of the techniques that some of the kids
Great.
can get out of some of their drawings. We've got a few pages here that I can show.
Excuse me, I just thought, can you imagine someone saying, yeah, so this is this guy Todd McFarlane, that great artist, this is what he draws, and wondering.
Those are those Pictionary drawings, you know what I mean? You got to be in and out of there in 10 seconds. One of the things that I want to show to kids is, as long as you give a good establishing shot first, you can buffalo your way through any other page. So, in other words, if I'm going to have a guy flying through the air, here he is flying through the air, and he's looking really majestic, dun, 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 and he's flying here again in perspective, kids, let's not do it, and he's zipping 100 miles an hour, wang, wang, wang. I don't know that he's flying in the bathroom or where he's flying. The easiest thing I tell kids, if he's flying, let people have no doubt where the person is. Easiest thing to do, zip, 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 we got clouds. Instantly puts them in the air. Better yet, throw a bird in there. And as a matter of fact, kids, don't throw the bird here, throw a couple of small ones here, and then maybe throw a big one that might actually cut in front of the guy here. So then again, you've given the plane that there's depth, even with the birds, there's depth there. Do your buildings here, and I always say do sliver backgrounds. There's 1,000 ways to do it. All you got to do is throw a little bit of a sliver of a building here, a couple windows, and now, I hate to say it, but there's no doubt, I don't care how blind you are, that this guy is not in the air. You got clouds, birds, and buildings. Well, of course the guy's up in the air. Once you ground him, then you've also got to do the same thing. You've got to ground him by showing something. Maybe the tree is behind him that's taller than him. Maybe the building is there, so a window's on top, and maybe a car is parked in front of him.
The chewing gum wrapper on the sidewalk.
Yeah, anything that does it. Also, the other thing, too, is when you're moving people in and out of, like a room, you want to move them in and out of a room in such a way that there's no, my first panel should be, if I'm going to show them, here's my first panel. Let's divide this in half. My first panel is there's 6 or 7 people talking in the living room. First thing is, well, what living room? Well, of course, we've got to have the house here. So here's the house. And I know this is breaking your heart, kids, that this isn't really detailed, but we got a time thing here. I've got an establishing shot with the house. I next go into, okay, I'll do a little bit of a down shot. I'll do a down shot here of some of the furniture and some of the TV or whatever's there, and then I'll establish the people standing, maybe one standing here and a couple are sitting and whatever else. If somebody comes in or out of that room, you've got to show them. So, and you don't have to show them by literally the guy's turning the knob, walking in the door. If this person right here is pouring coffee, you can easily do it by, here's the person still pouring the coffee with the big smile on their face. Hi, how are you? Still pouring the coffee. Here's the coffee mug here. Still pouring it. Here's the billowing smoke. Looks really cool. Kids like it. And over the shoulder is the door, and you see the person walking in right in here. So it doesn't have to be so blatant that the guy's walking in. And that can be done if somebody says, excuse me, I got to go check something, that they can walk out. But you still have this person still talking. They've given all the information, because this is where the writer's going to write up in here. But you still have moved the action so this guy is left, even if it was behind their back.
And by showing him pouring the coffee and establishing that he's pouring coffee there, you've given a continuity to it, so it doesn't look as if it's just broken continuity. And one thing that you've done without thinking, because it comes instinctively to you, you've put this small, even though this is small, you've put it right in the center of the panel in a place where the eye will go to it. You've kept space around it. You've got a curved line there. Everything in this panel, which you probably weren't even thinking of, the balloon here, the curved line here, this little bit of detail here, is focusing the eye on this small thing so you can't miss it, small as it is.
Yeah, okay. Whatever. It seems to work. It seems to work. I mean, now,
but you've got a natural sense of layout, is what I'm trying to say, because the layout is so important. And very often a fellow will draw something small, and you lose it in the panel because it's small. But if it's laid out correctly, no matter how small it is, you can make it stand out. And as I say, you've done this automatically.
See, one of the other things I try to get kids to is no matter what the page is, there should be one impact panel. Now, maybe it's sometimes impossible to do, but that impact panel could be, like I said, if it's the person pouring the coffee, maybe I'd make the panel go from head to toe all the way up, and then I would have that dark eye, because they might have just said something like, you know, Joni's missing or something like that. I've got the deep eye here, do a nice reflection in there, do the big close-up, and then like I said, I can do whatever it is. If they're smoking, I'll cut some of the smoke in and out of the panel. I might even have it actually break the borders of the panel. But even though they're saying, oh my gosh, Joni's missing, which is the writer's, you know, job to kind of get some of the interest in, that big riveting eyeball, you're going, oh, well, I mean, it must be something intense that they're saying at that point. If they got a scorn on their face, if they're going to laugh, really make them laugh. Let them know that they're not having a conversation. Some things they're going to say is going to be, you know, I'm concerned about this, but the next panel they can go, you're concerned about that. Well, you're always worried about that, you little Willie. And they could be saying something so they can even, you know, go from being kind of concerned to a kind of a joke within one panel, even though you're still bringing across all the information across that you're trying to get. Now, like I said, once you get to the action stuff, kids, good night. When you get to the action stuff, I've got a couple finished products here that might be a little more that the kids can see what's happening here.
Oh, that's great.
Spider-Man here, forget what the dialogue says for the moment. I know he's not saying pass the tea and crumpet, though. You know, he's hunched over. His hands, as you can see, they're taut right here. And if I could show the veins in the hand, I would. This one's there. He's got that big bow-legged spread eagle that the superheroes do. And it's like, you can tell that he's not really in a good mood, whatever it is.
It's a tense situation.
Yeah, that he's there. And so when I'm saying, now, what's in the background? Who knows, you know? I do this artsy-fartsy stuff. Kids call it style, thank you again. And all of a sudden it fills up the page and the kids go, wow, look at all the detail, look at all the detail. You do a little bit of silhouette, wow, look at all the detail. I do a lot of this line work, a lot of cross-hatching or something like that. Again, here's a body. Is he gonna hold them up? Yeah, he's not holding them up right here, as you can see. He's holding them up straight over his head. I mean, you're gonna pick a guy up, pick him up. Hide the anatomy with the cape, cool, he's out of there. Spider-Man shoots some webbing onto the back, so I've got to indicate that there's the webbing being attached to the flaming guy's head. So here's how you can tell it's the guy with the flame.
And here's that one strand of webbing you were talking about that goes all the way through.
It's a pain in the rear, right? And then when he pulls him off and says back off, he's pulling him off like 100 miles an hour. Here's little Spider-Man here. He's ripping him off. You know, he's not saying get out of the way like you and I would do. They're ripping them off. And again, those are my personal opinion on how to do superhero comic books only.
It's been wonderful having you here. I have to relent and do that. And I think that everybody watching this cassette, and I'm hoping there will be millions of them, now realize why we call the series Visits with the Comic Book Greats, because you certainly are one of them, and it's been a pleasure being here with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Right. Stanley, and welcome to the Rob and Todd Show. You know, most of the young people in this country read comics, and those who are young in heart, of course. Well, I've got a treat for all of them today. Two of the top talents in the comic book business, Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld, are here to tell everything they know about how to draw comics. It ought to take a couple of minutes, I guess. Hiya, guys.
Hey, Stan.
Todd,
How you doing, Stan?
Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld.
How you
Good
doing?
thing I practiced your names a minute
Hey, it is
before
a
you
good
came,
thing.
right?
You know what? We're here to give you a relief. you know?
I can use a lot of that. Now that I've done the introduction, the rest of it is up to you. I'm going to take a little nap because I've been in the studio most of the day. You guys go and elucidate and entertain and educate the public, and I'll be here when you come back.
Okay.
Okay, so
We'll maybe have a few surprises when we come back.
Okay, I'd love it.
Okay.
All right.
Go get him, guys.
See you, Dan.
Break a leg.
Okay, ready?
Okay. So what's up first?
You take the seat. I'm going to be lazy on this one.
Okay.
Okay, now the first vid that I did, I was kind of lazy on it. I didn't really show the kids anything. You showed them more in yours, and hopefully the other guys have showed them. So what we're going to do is we should probably do something that's a little more practical. Let's get down to the basics probably and show them. I find that in the mail that a lot of kids ask the same questions, like what kind of inks do you use? How do you use brush? Do you use a pen? What size of paper? I mean, a lot of kids don't even know what kind of paper that they use. One of the big mistakes that I know that a lot of kids seem to end up doing is when they start inking, they end up using rapidographs or ballpoint pens or even felt tip pens.
Markers.
That's not really the way to start the thing. What you got to do is, unfortunately, we don't have that many brushes here with us because right now we don't use the brushes. We use Coca-Cola pens right here. Guys like Terry Austin, Joe Rubenstein a bit, Scott Williams, Jim Lee. They use what we call Hunt's mapping points. There's anything from like a number 97 tip to number 108. The numbers depend on the flexibility of each one of those pen tips, and depending on whether you press hard or you press light or whether you need a fat line or a thin line will depend basically on what tip it is. What I always tell kids to do is go out to the art stores, basically grab one of each. If you go to the Hunt's mapping point place, they've got all of them in little containers. Grab a couple of each one, take them home and play with them, and see which one is the best for you. Also, go get a couple $15, $20 brushes. Don't go get a cheap $2 brush because it's just going to split. The hairs are going to be all over the place. It's not going to do you any good. Go get some good sable tip brushes and spend the money on it and see whether you want to do brush work or you want to do pen work. To each his own. We're not going to force you one way or the other. So
you want to use some form of India ink, Higgins, Black Magic, just anything. It says India ink, waterproof. What do you use? You use a 102?
I use a 102, Hunt's mapping point 102. Now the best thing about working like as a pro is if you guys get into Marvel DC, all you viewers out there, you get them for free. So you don't even got to pay for the suckers. You just phone them up, tell them you need some supplies, and they send them to you. So there's one incentive to get in there for free, guys. You don't have to pay for supplies anymore. Okay, now the other thing that they seem to have, I don't think most people realize that we reduce the pages. Now an average comic book page is about this size. I mean, I don't know what the size is like, about 5 by 7 or something like that.
Yeah, it's a little bigger than that.
But our black and whites are actually done 10 by 15. So we get the stuff pre-boarded from Marvel or DC or whether we get it from a company or something like that. But our pages are actually 10 by 15, which is about the size of Rob's ego. Although Bob Harris says it's usually about the size of a double-page spread. But this is about the size you want to be drawn because we're going to end up reducing it. It also gives you enough room that you don't have to do those tiny panels so tiny. People think that those tiny panels are like this big.
Yeah, you got to work the size.
Okay, now what we're going to do here, Rob, is that we're going to try and create, let's say maybe from a blank page, we're going to go all the way in and give them what our thinking is from a blank page. Depending on what the story is, we're going to show them a little bit of coloring. We're going to show them a little bit of how we ink. We've already shown them some of the tools. What do you rough out with? Like
I usually use a notepad, and then when I rough out, I use markers. It's the only time I use markers is when I'm doing roughs or layouts. Like I usually work about this size, laying out a page, and once I figure out.
So you do thumbnail sketches first.
Yeah, I always do thumbnails, which are just a form of sketching out your story. So you get all you work out all the kinks, you know, on this size as opposed to on your 11 by 17 paper, and then you transfer it there, or you can just look at it and take it over there. You can use a camera, you can trace it, you know, whatever.
See, now people also have overhead projectors that they blow up the stuff. Now some guys will draw little small things this size, thumbnail drawings like Rob does, and they throw the little guys in here, and then they'll blow them up to full size, 10 by 15. The reason that's a good idea sometimes is because then you don't lose a lot of the. I find that the more steps you do, the more your characters become stiff. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
And I see guys that they do little 2-inch drawings, and they do 5-inch drawings, and then they transfer it on and they do it in pencil, then they do it by ink, and by the time they actually get it done, what they actually had in the pencil little tiny stage was actually more dynamic and more exciting to look at. So I think that the less you actually repeat yourself, the more that the energy is still on the page.
Okay, but see, that is one method, but actually I just do that method you just said. So for some guys, working smaller is better than working bigger.
Your deadlines suck too, don't they?
No way, they're better than yours. And drawing this large for me is harder, because the bigger you get, the more your stuff expands, the bigger your eyes are, the bigger the space between your eyes and your nose. I work better small, because that's just, everything's confined, I can see what I'm doing.
But then you blow them up from there.
And I can do a close-up. Well, sure, but I go in pretty tight. You know, I'll go in there and I'll give them like a nose, you know, where placement of things is. Placement of the eyes, placement of the mouth if he's screaming or something. And then I go to a copy machine. You know, you can go to your local Xerox store or copy shop and get something copied there, because a projector can run you, you know, some pretty hefty cash there, can run pretty expensive. That's one method. You can lay it out straight on the page. Plenty of guys go straight to the page and boom, they're in and out of a page and onto a next one. I mean, this is a funky method. This is just the one I use. I go small, I blow it up, I got a light table, or you can put it up to your window if you can't afford a light table, and just transfer it that way. But don't, like Todd said, don't go real tight in there. Leave something so you can have some room to ink. I mean, for instance, this drawing is pretty loosely sketched out. When I go in and ink this, much the same as you do on your work here, you know, you're going in and tightening up. The kids can see you've roughed in, you know, your stomach muscles and stuff. But I know you're going to go in there and about 1,000 lines in there.
Now we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. That right now a lot of guys are starting to pencil and ink themselves.
Okay.
So some of the young guys now that are maybe watching a video that are trying to aspire. The one thing that I don't think happens is they don't hire you for 2 jobs at once.
No, that's true.
I see.
Specialize.
We're going to go through penciling, inking, coloring, all these things, and if you want to try all of them, I highly recommend it. But the one thing I also tell kids is, on the way to doing all those things, break them up. When you do your pencils, make a copy of that. Then when you ink it, make a copy of that. Then when you do the coloring, make a copy of that. Because if you hand in a penciled, inked, and colored page, the average editor is going to say, I'm assuming that you want to try out for all 3 jobs. Because if you just want to try out as a penciler, you're not showing me your pencils. And so not too many kids are actually professionally talented in 3 fields at once.
That's true.
Most of us usually get in there at one, we're good enough to break in, and then we kind of have to claw our way and get another job or something like that.
So if you can't draw real well, you can come in as an inker and then develop as a penciler. So, I mean, I know what you're saying, so go ahead. Don't stop.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm serious. Just you're right. You should specialize. Todd's right. You go in there and you show them a pencil and ink work. He's going to think you're trying out for inks.
Because I see too many kids that end up being, it's the old jack of all trades, master of none. I say whatever one you like the most, I don't even care if it's the one you're the best at, but hopefully it is. The one that you're the best at and the one that you like the most, keep doing that one over and over and over, because what's going to end up happening is if you give them the different steps, you give them the pencils, you give them the inks, they can either say, hey, kid's a good penciler, kid sucks on the inks, we're going to have to get somebody else to ink them. Or we go, the kid can't draw worth heck, but he's a pretty good inker, maybe we can put him on an ink job or something like that. Yeah. You're opening yourself up to more than one job. So what you got to do out there as we go through the steps, again, don't cram all that onto one page. Break them up, and when you send off your samples, then do it. The other thing, too, and they're going to hate us for this one here, they tell you to send it to the submissions artist, to the submission editor. Wrong. He's a flunky, I'm telling you. Usually the guy running there is the flunky. The guys that can give you the job is the editor. The editors are the ones that hire you. So what I tell the kids, too, you do 3 pages, and when you do 3 pages, you make 50 copies of it, and when you make 50 copies of it, you send it to every single editor at Marvel, DC, Eclipse, Image Comics, and whatever other good comic company you can think of on the week. But send it to everybody, because you only need one editor to actually give you that first job before...
And then you're cranking. You're rolling.
Inking, cranking.
There you go.
Okay, and the other biggest question that I get is, did you pay for that haircut?
Unfortunately, I did, yeah.
That's brutal, buddy.
Sorry about that.
That's brutal.
It's an old joke.
Okay, now...
Okay, should we go to layouts?
Give them. Okay, we'll go to the layouts, and then what we'll do is tighten up a little bit of the pencil to show them like how much tightness that we should go on some of the penciling.
Okay. Well, when it comes to layout, a lot of people struggle with storytelling. There's a lot of great storytellers out there, Jack Kirby, Frank Miller, Gil Kane, you know. When I approach a page, this is how I was shown. You want to use the inverted S, or basically a Z, to get through your page. You want to set up your page so that your eye is falling. This is going to make the difference between when that fan closes your book, whether he liked it a little more than the other one. The kid's not going to close the book and say, you're normally not going to close it and go, wow, I like that book better because Todd McFarlane utilized the inverted S. But it's a design element that's really effective. Oh, the Z.
Or for the Canadians, the Z.
There you go. It's just, you want to fall through the page. And for instance, set this up here. It's a lot of storytelling, and this doesn't mean you can't draw gorgeous babes and muscular guys and evil villains. You can do that big on each page. Let me erase this real quick.
You want the big one?
Like right here. That's okay. Like, okay, here, I'm going to go for a face, all right? Juicy close-up, pull your reader in. Don't do tiny stuff. You know, that's been done a million times. Don't do tiny stuff. Todd used to beat this into me.
The one thing that I tell kids is I call it the 2-inch rule, and I won't tell you whose work taught me the 2-inch rule, but it's either 2-inch or 1-inch rule. I see too many comic books that I can hold my fingers apart, 1.5 inch, whatever, and I can almost go through almost 80 to 90% of the panels, and I can fit almost every single guy into those 2 inches there. That doesn't bring my eye in there. Right. My attitude is the first time you see a guy, either he's a double page spread, he's bigger in life, it's a close-up of his face or something like that, and every time you introduce somebody into it, you should hit the reader over the head. Again, some guys write their stuff, some guys don't. For the most part, the average guy, and you out there aren't going to become a writer, pencil, or inker, I guarantee it. So you're going to be following the lead of a writer out there. So when you're following the lead of a writer, then what you're going to be doing is, he's got control over that. The only thing you've got control over is the visuals. So when you've got control over the visuals, you make those things bang out. Put the pressure on the writer, guys. I'm telling you right now, the writers, this isn't a how to write comic book. This is a how to put the pressure on the writers. You draw what you want to draw. You draw it exciting, and I guarantee it, you give them 10 panels, they write in 10 panels. You give them 2 panels, they can write that same story in 2 panels, guys. They just put a little bit more word balloons here and there. So don't feel the pressure so much of the writer. Sometimes new beginners, I find, get in there, and what another problem is, they do 10 panels a page. It's death. Try to combine. If the scene is a guy drives around a corner on a mountain, he goes through the girder or you know, over the cliff, the car explodes, and he jumps out of the car to save himself. The average beginner is going to do that in 6 or 7 panels. I can do that in 1 panel. I'll just forget that I don't have to show him going through the girders. I can just show the action lines going through the girders. I can show the car exploding in mid-flight, and I can show the guy jumping out of the way. And I'll show that he's coming over a canyon road, and I got all of it in 1 panel. And the best thing about doing like 1 panel instead of 8 panels is, instead of that thing being 10 panels that are about this size, like this, I've gotten 1 good panel about this big, and then I can cut into some other action. Or I can do 2 or 3 small ones to build up to the suspense that his tires screech, and then he ends up going over the mountain street or something like that.
Okay, well here, I can show you a little clearly now what I was talking about moving your eye through a page. Because really, you know what, you have to give the proper information, but move the eye clearly through a page. A lot of times you get, you know, if you get things all jumbled up on the page, it stops the reader in the middle of the story, and when you got an action story going, you want to rush right through, you know, you want that action to be felt on the page. And for instance here, we started with the close-up, then here we go to this angled shot behind this guy's shoulder, and there's his eyes, and here's this guy hunched down. Now he's hunched down. You don't want his head up here, because he doesn't look dramatic. His head's dropped down here, his eyes and his shoulders are down here, and then he's leaping at him. Now, I'm going to draw right over this. Our eye went like this. So boom, boom, boom. Think of it as an arrows. Arrows. You want to lead your eye here, then there, then there. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to do it, but most of the time you want to do this. Here, we're going to start off with an establishing shot. A lot of editors are going to give that establishing shot. And sometimes, you know what, give that one city scene so they can put in that little word balloon there.
And these right here are leaning buildings, because Superman came by.
Forced perspective.
Or Bedrock just walked by.
There you
It's
go.
one of the Youngbloods guys.
You got it. New image characters. Okay, here, we got this going here, and then I'll be done with this. So you got your panel borders. Okay, then we got a down shot of these people.
Let me interrupt. As you can see here, Rob's stuff isn't all that tight. And that's what we're stressing here on the layout part of it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry whether the eyeballs are straight or stuff. What you want to get here is a lot of the dynamics and storytelling, and the actual pretty drawing, that comes at a different stage right now when you're doing the tight penciling or you're doing the inking or whatever else.
Okay, I'm going to just finish this up right here. Okay, give the big lips. Okay, so we've got this. So our eyes going in like this, and we go over here, because we got a down shot of them walking through the city. We'll put a sidewalk, put a trash can over here so you know they're in the city. Down shots, the camera's up here now, but you've gone in here on your forced perspective, you've come down here. Now your eye's going to flow right through all this stuff because we close in on them, maybe give an up shot so your camera's down here shooting them up. So you got that, you're going head, head, so these two head, the placement of them is leading to your last panel, which you give a big head shot, nice big shot, you can go in there and do your pretty face, you can do whatever you want, boom. You're in the page, you're out of the page, you're flipping, and the action's coming with it. But yeah, don't go in tight when you're trying to figure out your storytelling. Just use those little stick figures, that jump out of you, or kick, or punch, or whatever.
Okay, now one of the other things too that you can do on your pages that a lot of us are starting to do, guys like Jim Lee and Will Portaccio and Rob and myself and Eric Larson. Is we're starting to get a little more designier with the pages.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely.
And unfortunately, this is a tough game for you guys to have to play here. Is that when you hand in your samples, if you hand it to the editors, a lot of them are kind of raised from the old school. They got to see ABCD storytelling, everything's cool, and unfortunately, we're going to show you a couple of tricks to designing and stuff, but you might have to curb some of those things until you're actually in. Because if you go out and you try to be real designy right off the bat, then sometimes they pick out those designy elements as a flaw in your storytelling. So you don't want to give them too many flaws. What I usually tell them is, when you go in there to get a job, they don't want to hire you. They've got a gun, and the least amount of bullets that they've got, the better chance you got of surviving and coming out of there. So the first time, they're going to say, you can't draw, you got no storytelling, you got no dynamics, you don't know what you're doing. They've got 8 bullets riddled in you, you're a dead man. The next time you come back, hopefully you've corrected one of those. They only shoot you 4 times, not too bad. You don't have to be perfect, because none of us are perfect when we get the job. But if we're only mortally wounded somewhat, and we can just say it was a flesh wound, you usually get a job, you're in there, you can I'm going to tell you what happened to me personally. I did these, as you can see, I do a lot of designy stuff. When I did Infinity, I did this wacko weird stuff, okay? Oh, yeah. I handed those samples in when I was trying to break in.
Yep.
Nothing. The first time I did what I call the standard 1, 2, 3, 4 panels, I got my first job. That was a year and a half of handing out design stuff. But as soon as I got the job, Steve Engelhardt gave me the first job. I said, Steve, I don't want to do 1, 2, 3, 4 panels. He goes, beauty, you don't have to. And I was able to do it. But I was already in. And then luckily, Roy Thomas also let me do that too. And I was able to do it once I was in. Trying to do it from before you're in kind of rubs them somewhat the wrong way. Now, the reason that we like designs is because I'm a hockey fan. I don't know if you guys know that, but I love hockey. Can't play it because I was born in California. But now look at this shirt here. Now this could have been a dull shirt. There's a lot of sports shirts out there. But here's a shirt here that's got a couple of little 1990s type stuff on it. Kind of looks cool. The back right here, it's got a design here, a couple different textures even on. Actually, if you could even feel this, you would see that
it's all bubbly.
There's all bubbly and there's plastic on it and stuff like that. But this is a wraparound cover. Now, only reason I'm showing this is that this could have been, I could show you 10 other San Jose Sharks memorabilia or T-shirts, and 9 of them put you to sleep. This one,
this could have been shrunk down.
This is cool. This is a cool shirt, and it's designy. And the reason it's designy is 90, it's hip.
Yep.
And so what I'm saying is the new comic books that are selling, whether the editors want to believe it or not, are new, hip, and they're designy.
More of a design slant.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how you can take blasé, nothing drawing, and I mean I did it enough times when I was doing Spider-Man or when I was doing Infinity, but one of the problems that they say is they don't want anatomy sticking out of a panel. I think that's wrong.
Yeah, me too.
You know what I mean? That's just a rule that they repeat. Now, again, you might have to keep the anatomy in when you're doing your first samples of getting the job, guys.
Yeah, be conservative until you get your first job.
Yeah.
And once you get your first job,
there's two sets of rules.
Start doing it a little at a time,
So listen to rule A to get in, and then listen to rule B when you're after you're in, and you can take some of this. Now, what I'm saying is, what you can do is, you can take a guy, I don't care what he's doing. As a matter of fact, we'll just make him standing there. Now, see, I'm not going to draw as pretty as some of the stuff that was on Jim and Wils's video. if you guys bought those, I hope. But we got the guy standing here. Here he is. Dun, 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 dun. He's bow-legged. Did it. Yeah, I know. You guys saw this in my first video, and it disappoints you. So, but he's sitting here. He's looking pretty cool. And then
Give him some detail lines.
give him some what?
Give him some detail lines to appease him.
Some
Just a
detail
couple.
line.
There you go.
Beauty.
There you go. Good deal.
Beauty.
There you go, kid.
Now he's now he's sitting here. I've got a big panel here. Now I can run this in 10 different ways. If I was going to give him a cape, probably if I wanted to be real funky, I'd give him the cape. Let's say if his cape is up here, I'd give him the cape up in here, and I'd run it up here, and then what I'd do is I'd cut it back behind his head here. I'd now use this as part of the border. And if I use that as part of the border, then I'd maybe do kind of a trailing thing where the cape went over the border here.
Yeah, yeah.
Then I'd cut the border in here, come through the old crotch shot here, come over here, and now since this is going to be the big one, I could actually even fit one panel in here, two panels here, make these a little smaller, a little moodier, and then build up to the suspense of dun dun dun, we have Rutabaga Man, or there's another cool character called the Spawn. So he's here, you get to see him for the first time. Again, you can't do that on every page, I don't think, but if you do it on a minimal amount. The other thing is, too, you want to put a little bit of, again, see the legs that are spread apart?
Yeah,
You want to do a little bit of dynamics or something like that, or, I mean, and those are kind of things, I see too many faces where the guy's sitting there like this, you know, when you could have him, you know, eyes like this, and his mouth wide open.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've got a little 6-month-old girl, and I guarantee you, I can tell when she's going number 1 or number 2. It's her face dynamics. You know, number 1 is an easy one. Number 2, ugh.
Or you can cut this face cool. You can, you know, or, yeah, you know, it's so standard. Just don't do that stuff. But you know that, but be creative. Take different cuts.
Beauty. Now, I've been pencil and inking for, gosh, I don't know how many, 3-4 years now or something like that. So I don't do any tight penciling right now. So why don't you give us like maybe just like an arm or something like that and show them about the amount of rendering that you want to do on this thing.
Okay, and then you want to come in and
for somebody to be able to ink it. Because one of the other things I find too is guys, when they pencil, they over-render. You want to keep your stuff simple black and white so that an inker can come in there and ink this stuff fairly easy.
All right. Okay, I'm just going to
And if you do, the other thing too, I've seen some beautiful black pencil stuff that's beautiful gray. I mean, it's a photograph, but a guy's got to come in there with black ink and's got to make that either black or he's got to make it white.
You know what? Don't do this in your pencils. An inker can't read that.
Yeah, or when they come in there and it gets a little bit darker.
Yeah, just ignore that altogether, because an inker, that's really, he's going to either have to turn that into separated lines to get that graduation or overlap that like that. Don't do the gray stuff. This isn't like illustration. We got to work in terms of black and white. Okay, just gonna draw a little face here.
Now, when I rough out my stuff, again, it doesn't matter, but I mean, I'm inking a lot of my stuff. I use a non-repro blue pencil. Now, people ask me why you use the blue pencil. The reason I use the blue pencil is because, as an inker, being probably one of the lazier guys in the business in some respects, if you use a non-repro blue, you don't ever have to erase the pages.
Yep.
Now, maybe you got an assistant that erases your pages or something like that. I don't know, but it's a pain in the rear, and something that can take like 20 minutes to half an hour to erase each page. And if you got 22 pages and you got a deadline, I mean, it could take you a day to erase those pages. So I just do it in non-repro blue, and I never have to erase my pages when I'm done inking them.
All right, I've almost got it. I'm just gonna put his chest in here. A little bust shot here of Shaft from Youngblood. And
a Youngblood. I hear that's doing swimmingly.
Oh yeah, doing real well. So, okay, I'm gonna do this. Give the arm down in here. You know, just usually shape everything out. You know, when you're little, you go, I don't need to shape those things out. I can go straight. You know, just like my favorite artist. Use the shapes. We all started that way too. You become more comfortable with them. And in time, you know, you'll be able to fidget with them, and they'll come out looking like that arm that Todd drew or Jim drew or what have you. Okay, all right, Todd, I'm almost done. I'm giving him his little wristbands here, and he's got his fist, and he's shaking it up at you, and here's this, and here's the ribs, and here's
now,
this.
if you were going to become a penciler, then you'd want those things to be obviously a little bit tighter.
Tight.
Like here
you can't give this to an inker. It won't look anything like this.
Well, you give it to me.
I'll give it to you.
Okay, if you're going to do this chest area right here, though, then I would say you give them the shadow in here.
Go for it.
Show them that there's going to be. Show them that there's going to be. Okay, well, we'll just tighten it up. I'll just tighten a little bit up on a pencil, though, because some of the guys that are just trying to break in as a penciler want to see a little bit of like exactly how tight you're going to want this. You're going to want this here tight enough so that some of the stuff is pretty much delineated, so that the inker isn't going to really have much problem. Chances of them teaming you up with the best inker in the business as a rookie is highly improbable, guys. So what you're going to do is you're going to make sure there's no questions to be asked on your artwork. Somebody's been inking for a while, and I think some other inkers that have been around for a while, most guys actually, I think, like to ink on from a little bit looser stuff, and the reason is because then they can throw a little bit of their flair on there. But
yeah, you want to go as tight as possible. The more leeway you give the inker, the more leeway he's going to take. I think, basically, that's what
okay, now what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to ink, let's say, this forearm right here. We can leave the rest of it up in here. Now, one of the things you want to do is, a thick line usually will tell you that there's a little bit of weight, and a lot of thickness on the line comes in curves. Dick Giordano usually puts his heaviest thickness when he gets into a curve. Like, so here's a muscle in here, so he'll get real thick in that muscle right there, and when he's coming up underneath the side, he also gets real thick on the bottom sides of the arms. And the reason is, once you get the thickness on the bottom side of the arm, you get a nice light coming up on top of it right in here. So if I come in here and I build this up with nice black, I mean, it depends on how much mood the scene calls for or whatever else too, and exactly how tight Rob put it in there or something like that.
Okay, well, also, you know what, when you're talking about light source, when you do something and you're going to consider a light source, if your light's coming over here, all your shadows are going to be cast on this side of the body. If it's over here, they're going to be cast on this side. If it's coming from below, they're all going to be cast against the edges of the body. You know, consider your light source. Just, you know, if you don't understand, put a flashlight up against your wrist or put a flashlight against your hand and see which areas become darker. That's where your light's coming from. And that's basically what Todd's doing right here.
Okay, now we gotta. See, now some of the areas too. Now we didn't bring a brush. We should at this disc. But your big areas, just knock them out with a brush. If you got a big area like a cloak that's that big, what we used to do is put an X in there, and then we just go in there and black them out. Now, if I wanted this to be real heavily, I would have used a brush. I didn't bring a brush. I apologize. Don't use a felt tip pen because it fades. But I'd come in here like this, and then I'd also continue that into his wristband in here. And the reason I continued in there because the light source would be the same or something like that.
Make me something?
No.
Too busy with your own work?
No, I
Behind on your deadline.
I already think your cable first appearance looks so good. Okay.
Because I drew it real well?
Yep.
Yes, Take
The other
on
thing
me,
you want
take
to do
me
too
off.
is on some of these things
Pick
too, is
pocket
like
belt.
if a guy leaves it too wide open, you might want to spot it
Radialista
black
até lolista
behind
do
him or
grupo.
something like that. Now, doesn't mean we're going to tell you where Reggie Jackson lives or anything. But what you want to do is you're going to
Olha
put
o
a
cu
shadow in here.
cabeludo, conhecido como
Let's say
radialista.
if this is where
Finge que
his,
escuta.
if this is where his little tit is over here, you might want to
Ô Zé, foi você que mandou um real
That's
aqui,
okay,
né?
please,
Obrigado, Zezinho.
Yeah, Stan's not here anymore. Or is he
Zé
sleeping?
total,
Oh,
Zé.
yeah,
Sleeping,
he's
he's taking a few
He's
Z's.
snoozing.
Foi
Okay,
você, né? Acho
so
que
we
foi
can put a
você.
black
Obrigado,
up
Zé.
in
Um
here
beijo no seu
to
coração.
tell you that this arm here
Seu lindo.
is now cutting in front of
Estudar,
his
né,
body
velho?
piece
Estamos aqui
right in here.
estudando aqui, né,
So now,
velho?
even
Né,
though,
velho?
let's say you
Né,
have his
velho?
belt
Ó,
up in
riscou
here,
ele,
or whatever
peraí
you've
que tá
got
tudo
and drawn
suave.
up in here. I
Você
don't
tá
know
bem,
what's
Zé?
drawn,
Como é que você tá?
We'll finish this
The
up here.
ribcage, buddy.
I know it's his ribcage, but he's got to have a belt in here. This is his, like he's up and adamant.
Okay.
Okay, here's his belt up in here or something like that.
Só falta o... Ah, não, tá
Use pencils
funcionando.
hardly anymore. But
Tá
his belt would be in here.
funcionando,
I would
yeah.
make that black.
Como é que você
And
tá,
we
Zé? Você
use-
tá bom?
The breast that looks like a felt tip
Tô aqui
marker tonight.
estudando, velho.
But
Velho.
we put
professor
that
da
up in here.
Atena.
And
Você botou description aqui?
we put a little bit of a shadow up in here.
você
Keep
mesmo,
keep
José.
the feathering to a little bit of a minimum,
Lê.
because otherwise I find what ends up happening is most guys overwork the stuff.
Lê
Now,
a
that's
porra do
kinda
chat do
hypocritical coming
YouTube,
from somebody
careca
like me
filha
who
da
throws in 1,000
puta.
lines, but I
Cabeça não
overthrow
tem
my stuff too.
cabelo e
You
sem
don't want to sit in there
pentelho.
throwing a million lines like this, because it just gets all washed out. And then plus, a lot of guys just do it for the sake of doing it too. I don't think they
Obrigado,
really
Zé.
know,
Beijo no seu
like, why
coração.
they're doing it.
Obrigado,
They just
viu?
kind of, they never know when to stop the
Tu
page.
manja em
Keep it open
inglês,
and a good
manja,
color
velho.
to come in there and save
Inglês
you.
eu sei.
You know, sometimes I look at it, sometimes I just keep doing it because I just want to see what it
Inglês
looks
eu
like in
manjo.
black
Yeah, no,
and
me
white
too.
without
Eu
the color.
manjo.
You kinda
Eu manjo
keep
mais
adding
do que
lines
inglês do que de
and-
mulher. Mentira.
So
de
now,
mulher
now
eu
the
manjo
other thing
também.
too, like if he was in this panel here,
Nossa, punheteiro pra
Okay,
caralho.
he's
Olha, já tá
behind
falando
here, here's
bosta
the
mesmo, ó.
wall. This
Desculpa.
might be
Manja, né? Os inglês nós conseguimos manjar. Obrigado, Zé, de novo aí. Obrigado, Zé. Um beijo no seu coração. Thank you very much. Eu manjo, cara, dos inglês. Aprendi novo, né? Quer dizer, eu tive que aprender tudo sozinho, né? Porque na época da aula não tinha ninguém. Você tá aqui ainda? Acho que tá, né? Na época de aula eu não conseguia prestar atenção, ficava muito nervoso, então eu não aprendi porra nenhuma. Aí tive que aprender sozinho depois, vendo filme. Por filme. Olha que loucura, né? Eu tô vendo aqui dos maiores desenhistas aqui que já existiram. Um dos, né? Tô dando uma estudadinha aqui no...
his little
né?
tit is over here. You might want to put.
Obrigado de novo, Zé. Beijo aí pra você.
Yeah, Stan's not here anymore. Or is he sleeping?
He's still sleeping, he's taking a few
He's
Z's.
snoozing. Okay, so we can put a black up in here to tell you that this arm here is now cutting in front of this body piece right in here. So now, even though, let's say you have his belt up in here or whatever you've got him drawn up in here, I don't know what you're drawing, but we'll finish this
The
up here.
ribcage, buddy.
I know it's his ribcage, but he's got to have a belt in here. This is his, like he's up and adamant. Okay, here's his belt up in here or something like that. I don't use pencils hardly anymore. But his belt would be in here. I would make that
Voltamos, né?
black,
A gente foge.
and we'd use
A gente fica fugindo do
the
que a gente
brush
sabe
that looks like a
fazer, mas
felt
não
tip marker
adianta.
tonight. But
Não
we
adianta
put
ficar
that up in
fugindo.
here, and
Eu fugi.
we put a little bit of a shadow up in
Fugir.
here. Keep the feathering to a little bit of a minimum, because
Voltei a
otherwise I
desenhar.
find what ends up happening is most
Ó,
guys
A
overwork
webcam bugou, cara. olha.
the stuff.
Yeah.
Now that's
Que bosta.
kind of hypocritical coming from somebody like me who throws in 1,000 lines, but I overkill my stuff too. You don't want to sit in there and throw in a million lines like this, because it just gets all washed out. And then plus, a lot of guys just do it for the sake of doing it too. I don't think they really know like why they're doing it. They just kind of, they never know when to stop the page. Keep it open and a good colorist to come in there and save you. You know, sometimes I look at it, sometimes I just keep doing it because I just want to see what it looks like in
Total.
black
Yeah, no,
and
me
white
too.
without the color.
You kind of keep adding lines and
Saiu
So
de
now,
novo.
now the other thing too, like if he was in this panel here, I might say, okay, if he's
Você
behind
tá
here,
bem,
here's a
Zezinho? Como
wall.
é que você tá?
This might be a little bit of him. Here's the wall here, and this would be a shadow back in here.
Which pops him out then?
So now,
That one?
yeah, so now he's coming around the corner. Let's say it was a nighttime scene or whatever, but he's coming out here, and this guy's black. I mean, you know, sometimes they do those ones where the leg is coming out of the shadows, whatever. I mean, there's got to be somewhat of a rhyme or reason. Some guys do some great shadowing on the face and stuff like that. I don't know how to do that, so I stay away from my weaknesses.
Yeah, me too.
The other thing, too, if you're going to do a story, I see a lot of stories, don't show, when you show your stuff to editors, don't give them 20 pages. You give them 20 pages, and that's death. Take 20 pages, pull your 3 best pages out there, and pretend that the rest of them are perfect. The more pages you give the guys, the more they're going to say that you could have 18 perfect ones and 2 bad ones, and they're going to go, look at these 2 bad ones. Too bad, we can't hire you. Like I said, they don't want to hire you. You got to go in there with that attitude. So take your 3 best, make it look like, don't let them know the other 17 sucked, and just go, oh yeah, the rest of them look. As a matter of fact, I even say, don't even say nothing, because I see too many kids drop their artwork in front of the editor and go, this isn't my best stuff, but, and the first question is, well, show me your best stuff.
And unfortunately, listen to what they have to say. They're the ones who can hire you or fire you. So if they have something to tell you, come back the next time. They want you to do a bunch of little shots. You don't like doing little shots, do little shots, get that job, do it well. Once you're in the door, you can begin experimenting. You know, Todd and I, well, actually, Todd came out of the gate experimenting. It takes some of us a little more time. Editor builds up some trust in you, then you can go and run with it. You want to teach him a little about anatomy?
Anatomy?
Yeah, come on, you're the king.
I don't know the anatomy. You know anatomy?
I'm not exactly an expert on this stuff. You know, I'm known to fake it a lot.
You know what?
We should call in some help.
I heard there's some help in the building.
Well, is Jim and Will still around, you think?
I think so. Let's get him in there. And I love that flashy orange jersey of his.
Oh yeah, these
Come
guys
on
are great. Hey, what's up?
Jimmy Lang.
Big Jim.
And
How you doing?
Wilson, how's it going, bud?
Hey, what's up?
Okay, now I don't know if you heard any of.
Piece of amateur stuff.
I don't know if you heard any of what we were saying, but we should get into some real drawing at this point. We were just going over a lot of the basics.
There we go. Got it all set up for
The
you.
anatomy. Why don't you guys give us something on like what you're thinking of in terms of like where the muscle structure is going, how and why, how it fits together. I notice a lot of guys when they put arms together, doesn't look like they're actually connected. You know what I mean? They just kind of look like they took parts and just stuck them together. So see if you can give them something here.
I think everyone uses a different way, but what I found most successful for me that has resulted in the figures looking tight and not put together from different angles is to rough something out like Rob was doing, and try. I think of like the chest as a barrel shape, and the arms as cylinders, and the head as a square cylinder, and the most important shapes to me are the.
Try it.
Well, I'm about to here.
Okay.
All right. Okay. The chest. Okay.
Right.
The chest shape is like this. Okay, this is nothing new. This is George Bridgman's Guide to Life Drawing.
Let me ask you a question. Do you draw the chest first, because then it's easier to attach the head afterwards?
Right. I'll start with the chest and then the pelvis. The two most important, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and I got the pelvis.
Is that how you do it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because then you can connect these two like
right.
a string.
Just put 2 lines right there, and you got your abdomen, and everything else comes out of here.
I'm learning.
Right.
Or Gil Kane used to do that he would take this and turn it one way, and then take this and turn it the other way, and he used a twine of rope in between, and then he just figured out how to.
Rather than learn every individual muscle and where it starts and where it ends up, I try to think more in terms of the overall shape of each muscle mass group, and they look more like football shapes to me. So just connect them up like that. Connect that.
We could use like a live model.
And if this is the center of mass of the chest, and this is the center of mass of the pelvis, the further apart they are, the more dynamic your figure is going to get. You know, Jack Kirby, I'm not sure you guys anything new. His chest and pelvis are so far apart. That's where he got all his energy and action coming in. So in this side we have a guy punching or something like that. We got the chest here, the pelvis here. I'm going to do a side shot from the pelvis here. And if you look at where these lines are, it's further apart. I can even put it all the way over here, right? The further you put them apart, the more energy you're going to get. You put this leg back. Everything kind of works contralaterally or something like that. So if I throw this arm out, this leg's going to go back. You're never going to have a guy running with this leg up and this arm out. You can, but you're gonna lose some of the energy that you got. So if this leg goes back, boom, this arm. For every action, there's a reaction here, and you know.
Oh, that's great.
Right.
Yeah, that looks like he's hitting the guy.
Right.
He's knocking him silly. Oh yeah, the arm behind there.
Can I strike this?
We're gonna.
I already did.
Cool, cool.
All right.
Where's the copy machine?
Cylinders in the head as a
editor builds up some trust in you, then you can.
But we should get into some real drawing at this point. We're just going over a lot of the basics.
There we go. Get it all set up for
The
you.
anatomy. Why don't you guys give us something on like what you're thinking of in terms of like where the muscle structure is going, how and why, how it fits together. I notice a lot of guys when they put arms together, doesn't look like they're actually connected. You know what I mean? They just kind of look like they took parts and just stuck them together. So see if you can give them something here.
I think everyone uses a different way, but what I found most successful for me that has resulted in the figures looking tight and not put together from different angles is to rough something out like Rob was doing, and try to. I think of like the chest as a barrel shape, and the arms as cylinders, and the head as a square cylinder. And the most important shapes to me are
Try it.
Well, I'm about to here.
Okay.
All right. Okay. The chest. Okay. The chest shape is like this. Okay. This is nothing new. This is George Bridgman's Guide to Life Drawing.
Let me ask you a question. Do you draw the chest first, because then it's easier to attach the head afterwards?
Right. I'll start with the chest and then the pelvis. The two most important, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I got the pelvis.
Is that how you do it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because then you can connect these two like
right.
a string.
Just put two lines right there, and you got your abdomen, and everything else comes out of here.
I'm learning.
Right.
Or Gil Kane used to do that he would take this and turn it one way, and then take this and turn it the other way, and he used a twine of rope in between, and then he just figured out how to.
Rather than learn every individual muscle and where it starts and where it ends up, I try to think more in terms of the overall shape of each muscle mass group. And they look more like football shapes to me. So just connect them up like that, connect that.
We could use like a live model.
And if this is the center of mass of the chest and this is the center of mass of the pelvis, the further apart they are, the more dynamic your figure is going to get. You know, Jack Kirby, I'm not telling you guys anything new.
Sure.
His chest and pelvis are so far apart, that's where he got all his energy and action coming in. So in this side we have a guy punching or something like that. We got the chest here, the pelvis here. I'm going to do a side shot from the pelvis here. And if you look at where these lines are, it's further apart. I can even put it all the way over here, right? The further you put them apart, the more energy you're going to get. You put this leg back. Everything kind of works contralaterally or something like that. So if I throw this arm out, this leg's going to go back. You're never going to have a guy running with this leg up and this arm out. You can, but you're going to lose some of the energy that you got. So if this leg goes back, boom, this arm. For every action, there's a reaction here.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that looks like he's hitting the guy. He's knocking him silly. Oh yeah, the arm behind there.
Can I strike this?
We're gonna.
I already did.
Cool. All
right.
Where's the copy machine?
That's right. Take this. You take it to your blow.
Oh, that's great. No, you know I always start with the head and I do all these zigzags.
And then
that's why you're in suck.
That's right. Sorry.
All right, watch it. You got the thigh here, and then all the interlocking parts like the elbows and the knees. They're like little round softballs, you know. And this is something that you'll find in most art books, but the kids, they don't have the patience or whatever to do it. But if you want to be serious about your work, you got to take the time and treat each shape, and learn the shapes. Here's an ankle. Here's a little ball there.
Okay, now the one thing too that I tell people too is like on the chest here, the chest line here runs into this line always, and that's an easy way to like connect those two lines. So even if his hand is raised up, if you start here, then you know that here's his bicep and here's his shoulder or something like that. It's an easy way to, as long as this is always kind of connected here, this line, the chest from the bottom of the breast,
eu queria registrar esse processo. Então, quando tiver
well, every muscle, I remember Will telling me a long time ago,
No More Mutants
every muscle
ali em cima,
has a point of origin.
sobre quadrinhos.
So it comes out of here and it ends up here.
É só para registrar para mim mesmo, sabe? Mim mesmo.
And as long as you know where all the muscles start
tem a pica pequena.
You know, that's really all you need to know.
É mais registro pessoal mesmo.
That won't help you draw any better.
So
da minha volta e do avanço
he's gonna really flesh that out.
Finish this
pra
up.
guardar de recordação, né?
Good too. Now let me just say another thing too. Is that
É mais ou menos
Wilson and Jim are probably two of the better guys right now for anatomy and the superhero comic books. You don't have
a lot of PR.
No, I mean that's true, but you don't. Their stuff is pretty, and right now a lot of the.
That's where he got all his energy and action coming in. So on this side we have a guy punching or something like that. We got the chest here, the pelvis here. I'm gonna do a side shot from the pelvis here. And if you look at where these lines are, it's further apart. I can even put it all the way over here, right? The further you put them apart, the more energy you're going to get. You put this leg back. Everything kind of works contralaterally or something like that. So if I throw this arm out, this leg's going to go back. You're never going to have a guy running with this leg up and this arm out. You can, but you're going to lose some of the energy that you got. So if this leg goes back, boom, this arm. For every action, there's a reaction here, and you know.
Oh, that's great.
Right.
Yeah, that looks like he's hitting the guy.
Right.
He's knocking him silly. Oh yeah, the arm behind there.
Can I select this?
We're gonna.
I already did.
Cool.
All right.
Where's the copy machine?
That's right. Take this. You take it to your blow.
Oh, that's great. No, you know I don't use. I always start with the head, and I do all these zigzags.
And then
that's what there's a twine of rope in between, and then he just figured out how to.
Rather than learn every individual muscle and where it starts and where it ends up, I try to think more in terms of the overall shape of each muscle mass group. And they look more like football shapes to me. So just connect them up like that, connect that.
We could use like a live model.
And if this is the center of mass of the chest and this is the center of mass of the pelvis, the further apart they are, the more dynamic your figure is going to get. You know, Jack Kirby, I'm not sure you guys anything new.
Sure.
His chest and pelvis are so far apart, that's where he got all his energy and action coming in. So on this side we have a guy punching or something like that. We got the chest here, the pelvis here. I'm going to do a side shot from the pelvis here. And if you look at where these lines are, it's further apart. I can even put it all the way over here. Right. The further you put them apart, the more energy you're going to get. You put this leg back. Everything kind of works contralaterally or something like that. So if I throw this arm out, this leg's going to go back. You're never going to have a guy running with this leg up and this arm out. You can, but you're going to lose some of the energy that you got. So if this leg goes back, boom, this arm. For every action, there's a reaction here, and you know.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that looks like he's hitting the guy.
Right.
He's knocking him silly. Oh yeah, the arm behind there.
Can I select this?
We're gonna.
I already did.
Cool. All
right.
Where's the copy machine?
That's right. Take this. You take it to your blow.
Oh, that's great. No, you know I don't use. I always start with the head, and I do all these zigzags.
That's why your anatomy sucks.
That's right. Sorry.
All right, watching. You got the thigh here, and then all the interlocking parts like the elbows and the knees. They're like little round softballs, you know. And this is something that you'll find in most art books. But the kids, they don't have the patience or whatever to do it. But if you want to be serious about your work, you got to take the time and treat each shape and learn the shapes. Here's the ankle. Here's a little ball there.
Okay, now the one thing too that I tell people too is like on the chest here, the chest line here runs into this line always, and that's an easy way to like connect those two lines. So even if his hand is raised up, if you start here, then you know that here's his bicep and here's his shoulder or something like that. It's an easy way to, as long as this is always kind of connected here, this line, the chest from the bottom of the breast or whatever you want to call it, runs into the bicep line here, and then that makes it easier to attach that right there.
Well, every muscle, I remember Will telling me a long time ago when I was first breaking in, every muscle has a point of origin. So it comes out of here and it ends up here. And that's why they kind of have this sort of elongated football shape.
Sure.
And as long as you know where all the muscles start and end, you know, that's really all you need to know. You can learn the names and stuff, but that won't help you draw any better.
So let's.
I'm gonna have Wills go in there, and
cool.
he's gonna really flesh that out.
Finish this up.
He knows what he's doing.
Go Wills.
Get it to him. Now let me just say another thing too. Is that Wilson and Jim are probably two of the better guys right now for anatomy and the superhero comic books. You don't have
a lot of PR.
No, I mean that's true, but you don't. Their stuff is pretty, and right now a lot of the people find that real attractive. But if you go back in years, you'll find that Jack Kirby's anatomy was not perfect. As a matter of fact, far from it. His knees were squiggles. But because he was consistent with everything that he did, it worked over and over. And the one thing that you find is anybody who's got any kind of style, even though it's not perfect, Walt Simonson's got a funky style too, his stuff is consistent. So as long as you find a way to do it and it's somewhat believable. Now, you know, I mean, some people, you know, right now, like I said, they seem to like the Wilson Jim more than, let's say, a style like Mike Magnolia or something that's kind of a little blocky or something like that. But, I mean, who's to say in 5 years? I mean,
it won't go back to that.
Yeah,
and the strength is in your gesture.
Right.
So as long as your gesture's there, actually, you know, you can. I flunked out in anatomy early on, but I was able to I think, pull a lot of stuff off because the gestures.
But you do the big jerk panels.
There you go. There you go. Okay, go.
Well, actually, I found out that. Like, I really admire Barry Windsor Smith, but early on in Conan, he did some wonky, wacky muscles.
Yeah.
But he took those muscles. He took those muscles, though. No, but he took those muscles and he made everything round, everything solid. And as long as you make it solid, then it's believable.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, if you just do lines going, I mean, like what Jim was saying about here, every line goes somewhere. If he had this line going out over here and then this line going down to here, and this line going over here, and this line cutting in the air, then you have lines going nowhere, and then everything becomes flat.
Yeah.
If you can make it round, as wacky as it may look or seem to an anatomy professor or anything, if you can make it solid, it's believable.
Oh yeah, no, and
that's
your
the whole
stuff is
thing.
real tight. It's always
In the mono world, the words of Stanley, draw. Well, draw.
Finish it up. So
solid. It's believable.
Oh yeah, no, and your stuff is real tight. It's always
in the mono world, the words of Stanley, draw. Well, draw.
Finish it up. Show us, you know, go in and put that detail in. Those kids
Yeah, give us a good image.
Plug.
See, I got the technical part here. See, basically, what we do is
let's draw.
You study that.
Good Lord.
We
don't get paid for the
work. That's why I never let him on telephone when we formed the studio, because you never get any work.
We always ask for Jim.
That's the other thing you got to master. You got to be able to talk and draw at the same time.
It's tough. Gotta get that phone right there.
What's your name?
It's Web. It's Web.
There you go. No way I can talk and draw at the same time.
No, but basically, you want to take the muscles.
Let the kids see what's going on there. All right, beauty.
This is great.
But you basically take what muscles are there, and like I said in my piece, if you ever saw it, I love taking all the muscles and making them mean something. You know, it's kind of like a puzzle to me. You take the muscles that are there, and you put them all together. Like, here's an elbow. It's got to go in right there, and all these striations or whatever you want to call it.
Think about it as like rope or
right.
a weave or something. The muscles kind of intertwine with one another in complex patterns.
Yeah, and you want everything to, I mean, like, for instance, see that little touch right there?
Draw.
That's the edge of this. See? This is a whole muscle right there. You want things to go somewhere.
If we can clone you,
guys,
boom! One guy can give advice and the other guy can draw.
We forgot the biggest rule for anything, whether it's drawing, penciling, we forgot it. Wally Wood's famous rule, if in doubt, black it out. There it is. Now, this is what I do. I don't have near the talent of doing anatomy that Wilts has here. So once I get down to the leg and I try to put the puzzle together, and the puzzle ain't working, beauty! We put a little smoke screen in there.
You got it.
We put a tree stump over here.
Go ahead.
We put a tree over his ankle.
Do the fade.
Okay.
You ever notice why when Tarzan's standing, he stands in thick grass? The reason he stands in thick grass is because people hate drawing his feet. Not too many people are good at drawing ankles and little toelies.
You just pick up here.
Jim. Oh, Jim's not talking much. He can't talk and draw either.
Yeah, Jim.
We got him.
Get that bubble gum out. See if you can chew.
No way. He talks and draws. He masters.
What am I doing? Thanks. It's amazing.
Are you not repeating what you did in the other video, are you?
Like
you gotta give
no, this is a little better. This is a little better than.
I know you'd be hosting.
I'm getting the first class stuff.
Man, imagine if we all got together and like formed a company or did books together. Holy moly! Image. Yeah,
there you go.
We got a good image so far. This is a good image.
Great little depth. Boom. Put a shadow.
Uh oh, shadow. Black it out.
Oh, there it is. Black.
Do the fade.
Spotting of black.
Right.
Okay.
Where's your pen?
Attribute this one to Mike McNewell.
Try something here. Oh, Mikey, king of the fade.
Right.
Wait, I'm gonna try and come in here and give that little pretty line. You see, Todd hates this, but I always splotch my ink first. Keep going.
Okay.
You should have brought some ink with you, bud. You were giving me a bad time there.
Oh man, I'm trying to do that pretty Scott line, the Scott Williams wiggle. Where's Scott? Just had a kid, right? Couldn't make it.
I think it's worth it.
Oh yeah, well. Okay.
There you go. Okay, now hold on a sec. Now we've gone to one extreme. Now nobody's talking.
Oh, get out of here.
Okay,
no,
now,
I did the squiggle.
Wolf,
I was working.
You're not drawing. You can talk now, bud.
Talk away with it.
There you go. Okay, you want to go in the render screen?
Even hair. You can make the hair move around, too.
Oh, look at that. God, Jim Lee.
Jim Lee. God Lee or Jim Lee?
Are you ready to stand?
Don't wake him
We
up.
cover that one.
Don't wake him up.
Okay,
Don't wake him up.
Uh-oh, I'm getting that little line there. Can I ink you guys' books?
Okay,
wow,
beautiful.
check it
now,
out.
again, guys.
He's naked. All right, put some pants on the guy.
Keith?
There you go.
Put some pants on him.
There you go.
Oh, this looks hot. Okay, I'm gonna go in here.
Let's call him something. No.
Wait, what should we call him? This guy looks great.
Put a little hair.
I'm going in here and wiggling. I'm sitting in cool lines. What other kind of lines do you do? Oh, you do all that cross-hatching
Call
stuff?
him the AM man. Because we did this in the morning.
No way, call him Mr. Image. Boom, boom. Okay, I'm gonna do
the thing with anatomy, I think, is to think of the muscle groups and then to put a heavy shadow along one side. And that it's a way, you know, a lot of kids will go in there straight, every muscle, and give you every single line, and it looks really kind of grotesque. If you can go in there and just give me one side, it suggests the rest of the stuff. It's all there. You don't have to draw every muscle. If you put a shadow on one side, the muscle shows up.
And basically, I mean, if we're really honest with everybody, even though a lot of this isn't quite the detail that you'd like to see, we're just trying to give you some bits and pieces. But time's running out here. We should get on our way. Right. We stole all these ideas from Stanley anyway, so we should go check to see what he thought about it, guys. So sign it there. Oh,
yeah, boom!
Ooh, hey,
looks like a DC character.
You're hitting cyan.
That's my new character.
This is great, you guys.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming, Jim.
What's up?
Okay, hey, let's go. Let's go see.
What'd you think, Stan?
Stan.
Could we take your place? Are we good video hosts?
Oh, hey, guys, that was thrilling. That was really a great show. Thank you, folks, and good night. Nobody's ever had an ending like that on any show, anytime, anywhere. How was it? Okay. Gentlemen. Go home.
Paulistão.
Telecurso 2000, se prepare agora, é a hora da revisão. Peraí, não é aquele personagem louco que eu faço, né? A dificuldade de separar, né? A loucura da realidade. Mas será que tá mesmo tudo separado?
comments, leave them below. And if you have any questions about the tools that I use, take a look in the description below. Also, I have a new Skillshare course on drawing superhero heads. I've left a link in the description below. This video is going to be all about drawing hair. So to start, I'm going to draw this figure with long flowing hair, which we will shade in dark. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I've got basically a hairline that is going to come around here. I did an earlier video on drawing female heads where I showed essentially where the hairline rests on the head. And so I'm going to use that. I generally don't draw that in. It's something that I kind of just visualize in my head. But if it's helpful to know, you're basically drawing at the top of the forehead line to start your hair. And I'm going to start directly in the center for this one. I want to give her a center part. Obviously, if you so these two together, that's a quarter, that represents a half here. So 8.5 heads tall, approximately. We're going to do the same thing with this figure here. So here's my head here. My neck will be a quarter. Down to the bottom of my chest, there's another head. At the top of my waist is another head. Bottom of the crotch is another head. Halfway down the legs will be another head. Bottom of the knees is another head. This figure's working out a little bit better. And you can see how much variation I have in my own figures. Here's another, and then the feet is another quarter, which represents 8.5 heads tall. And you should be able to do this with all of your figures. And you can see how quickly and easily I was able to get those divisions without having to do this diagram and do all this nonsense. Do this with all of your figures. You've got a bunch of them on the page, hopefully. It gets tougher when they're in more unusual or seated positions, but really, I wouldn't worry about that right now. What you want to do is just make sure, in general, your figures are proportional. Another thing to bear in mind, I'm going to lower my arm here. My elbow should be right about that. What I want here, everything but what you essentially how to put a figure together. They're all drawn with a lot of detail, and that can be very, very confusing when you're trying to just learn how to put a figure. From the How to Draw Comics, the Marvel book. I'm not being 100% accurate with it probably, but it's really not the point right now. The point is to just get started drawing figures. I don't want to worry about any kind of detail, any kind of an Comics and Marvel Way book. And you're going to find when you do this yourself, if you haven't done these at all or not much, they're going to be a little bit difficult and they're going to be a little stiff, but that's all right because it gets much more natural and flowing as you go along. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about what all this is. I've got videos that really cover how to do gesto drawing well, and it goes really kind of in depth. And so we're not going to do that here. What I want to do is really just show you a way to kind of get started. And so I'm going to go ahead and draw this figure. This is straight from the How to Draw Comics, the Marvel Way book. I'm not being 100% accurate with it probably, but it's really not the point right now. The point is to just get started drawing figures. I don't want to worry about any kind of detail, any kind of anatomy. What I want to do is just start putting a figure on the page. And so there's one. This isn't anywhere near as effective as John Buscema's figure. It's much better, but the more you do these, the better you'll get at it. And I've been doing these for years, so you'd think I'd be a little bit better at this. But there you go. There's my attempt at John Buscema's figure here. And what you need to do from here is spend the first couple hours, I'm going to say 2 hours of your first day just doing these. And so let's go ahead and just do one more quickly. Here's another figure from his book. And I really recommend copying these figures specifically because he does it really, really well. These are a really great starting point for drawing figures. And if you go right into figure drawing from life, if that's the way you choose to go, or you look at other comics, none of these figures are broken down in this way. They're all drawn with a lot of detail, and that can be very, very confusing when you're trying to just learn how to put a figure together. So I really recommend you play with these figures before you move on and try to draw from other comics or from life. This takes away everything but what you essentially need to know at this stage. And so now after I've drawn a whole whack of these, the next stage that I need to worry about, and let's call this hour 3 of day 1, is going to be proportion. I don't recommend that you draw figures and you measure them out and do all the proportions in a measured way like some kind of diagram. Maybe that can be helpful. I don't personally like to learn that way. It's very, very dry, and when things get too dry, I really lose interest. But what you need to know is that a standard comic book figure is 8.5 heads tall. And you can go a little bit higher, you can go more towards 9.5 even, and it can really work, and you'll see artists that do that. I really don't recommend that you go less than 8.5 heads tall because these are heroic figures. And when figures start to get too short or the head's too large for the figure, it really stands out in a negative way. And so the way that I'm going to use proportion, instead of having to draw these diagrams and do all this stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, my head is just about that big. I'm going to do this all by eye. So my neck is going to be 1/2 a head tall right there. And then my chest down to the bottom of the chest should be about the same height as the head. And I think that's about right. And then we've got another division about a head height here, which is just about the waist. We've got another one that should be at about the crotch. Another one halfway down the legs. And then the bottom of the knees should be another one. And look at this. I'm starting to, my natural figures, and I said I was making the legs too short. I tend to draw a little bit more like 9 heads tall. So you'll have to bear with me a little bit. So I'm here. I think I went a little bit high there. And that's going to be about 8 heads high here. And all this is a bit of an estimate. And it's just a really good way for you to be able to check all of your figures quickly. You don't need to be breaking out a ruler and measuring these all accurately. What you need is a good general sense. About halfway down your legs should be another division. Then your ankles is one more division. Again, none of these are perfect, but I'm not entirely worried about that. What I want is a good general sense. And also my legs are spread out, so it's going to affect maybe the length. Or maybe I'm just telling myself that. And then the feet are your other half, and that's where you get the half. So these two together, that's a quarter, that represents a half here. So 8.5 heads tall, approximately. We're gonna do the same thing with this figure here. So here's my head here. My neck will be a quarter. Down to the bottom of my chest, there's another head. At the top of my waist is another head. Bottom of the crotch is another head. Halfway down the legs will be another head. Bottom of the knees is another head. This figure's working out a little bit better, and you can see how much variation I have in my own figures. Here's another, and then the feet is another quarter, which represents 8.5 heads tall. And you should be able to do this with all of your figures, and you can see how quickly and easily I was able to get those divisions without having to do this diagram and do all this nonsense. Do this with all of your figures. You've got a bunch of them on the page, hopefully. It gets tougher when they're in more unusual or seated positions, but really, I wouldn't worry about that right now. What you want to do is just make sure, in general, your figures are proportional. Another thing to bear in mind, I'm going to lower my arm here. My elbow should be right about at this line here, and my hand should be just below the crotch. And so that really kind of gives you all the measurements that you need to get started drawing these kinds of figures. And by now, after having done all this, drawn all these figures and measured them out, you should be a good 3 or 4 hours into your first day. If you're young and have no responsibilities, you can do this all day and you have all the time in the world. If you don't, what you want to do is really use your time strategically as possible. So you might have to take this first step and use just an hour, and then this next step and take a half an hour, and just space it out over more days.
The gods will bless us, won't they?
Comics. That was the book that I first saw and just made me a big comic fan. all of the old classic X-Men stuff with John Byrne and Chris Claremont. Then I did Avengers, which is another classic Marvel comic, and it was a huge thrill to do. I did Moon Knight, a character that I think more people know about now than it did when I did the book. They had a great TV show, so that was a big one for me. The Marvel art of David Finch has a range of the different work that I did over 10 years at Marvel, and then over the years since, I've done a lot of covers and some different things. It's got X-Men and Avengers and Moon Knight and some Hulk pictures. I'm a huge Hulk fan. Basically every character you can think of, practically. I'm sure you can beat me on that one, but I've got a lot in there. And yeah, it's some of my favorite work, some of the work that I'm most proud of. We tried to keep it down to the work that I think really represents that period of my career the most. I'm very, very excited about this. It has so much work that I'm incredibly proud of, and a bunch of other things, a lot of other things, and it's all in the book. Thank you to all of you for your support for this project, and really for my career. I love what I do. I wake up every morning, get to draw pictures, and it's because of you. So
the next step from here, and this could be later in the same day after you grab some coffee and some lunch, or it can be the next day. It really depends on just how quickly you want to try and stiff, but that's all right because it gets much more natural and flowing as you go along. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about what all this is. I've got videos that really cover how to do gesto drawing well, and it goes really I've got videos that really cover how to do gesto drawing well. and it goes really kind of in depth. And so we're not going to do that here. What I want to do is really just show you a way to kind of get started. And so I'm going to go ahead and draw this figure. This is straight from the How to Draw Comics, the Marvel Way book. I'm not being 100% accurate. With it probably, but it's really not the point. Right now, the point is to just get started drawing figures. I don't want to worry about any kind of detail, any kind of anatomy. What I want to do is just start putting a figure on the page. And so there's one. This isn't anywhere near as effective as John Buscema's figure. It's much better, but the more you do these, the better you'll get at it. And I've been doing these for years, so you'd think I'd be a little bit better at this. But there you go. There's my attempt at John Buscema's figure here. And what you need to do from here is spend the first couple hours, I'm going to say 2 hours of your first day just doing these. And so let's go ahead and just do one more quickly. Here's another figure from his book. And I really recommend copying these figures specifically because he does it really, really well. These are a really great starting point for drawing figures. And if you go right into figure drawing from life, if that's the way you choose to go, or you look at other comics, none of these figures are broken down in this way. They're all drawn with a lot of detail, and that can be very, very confusing when you're trying to just learn how to put a figure together. So I really recommend you play with these figures before you move on and try to draw from other comics or from life. This takes away everything but what you essentially need to know at this stage. And so now after I've drawn a whole whack of these, the next stage that I need to worry about, and let's call this hour 3 of day 1, is going to be proportion. I don't recommend that you draw figures and you measure them out and do all the proportions in a measured way like some kind of diagram. Maybe that can be helpful. I don't personally like to learn that way. It's very, very dry, and when things get too dry, I really lose interest. But what you need to know is that a standard comic book figure is 8.5 heads tall. And you can go a little bit higher, you can go more towards 9.5 even, and it can really work. And you'll see artists that do that. I really don't recommend that you go less than 8.5 heads tall because these are heroic figures. And when figures start to get too short or the head's too large for the figure, it really stands out in a negative way. And so the way that I'm going to use proportion, instead of having to draw these diagrams and do all this stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, my head is just about that big. I'm going to do this all by eye. So my neck is going to be a half a head tall right there. And then my chest down to the bottom of the chest should be about the same height as the head. And I think that's about right. And then we've got another division about a head height here, which is just about the waist. We've got another one that should be at about the crotch. Another one halfway down the legs. And then the bottom of the knees should be another one. And look at this. I'm starting to, my natural figures, and I said I was making the legs too short. I tend to draw a little bit more like 9 heads tall. So you'll have to bear with me a little bit. So I'm here. I think I went a little bit high there. And that's going to be about 8 heads high here. And all this is a bit of an estimate, and it's just a really good way for you to be able to check all of your figures quickly. You don't need to be breaking out a ruler and measuring these all accurately. What you need is a good general sense. About halfway down your legs should be another division. Then your ankles is one more division. Again, none of these are perfect, but I'm not entirely worried about that. What I want is a good general sense. And also my legs are spread out, so it's going to affect maybe the length. Or maybe I'm just telling myself that. And then the feet are your other half, and that's where you get the half. So these two together, that's a quarter, that represents a half here. So 8.5 heads tall, approximately. We're gonna do the same thing with this figure here. So here's my head here. My neck will be a quarter. Down to the bottom of my chest, there's another head. The top of my waist is another head. Bottom of the crotch is another head. Halfway down the legs will be another head. Bottom of the knees is another head. This figure's working out a little bit better. And you can see how much variation I have in my own figures. Here's another, and then the feet is another quarter, which represents 8.5 heads tall. And you should be able to do this with all of your figures. And you can see how quickly and easily I was able to get those divisions without having to do this diagram and do all this nonsense. Do this with all of your figures. You've got a bunch of them on the page, hopefully. It gets tougher when they're in more unusual or seated positions, but really, I wouldn't worry about that right now. What you want to do is just make sure, in general, your figures are proportional. Another thing to bear in mind, I'm going to lower my arm here. My positions, but really, I wouldn't worry about it. It gets tougher when do all this nonsense. Do this with all of your figures. You've got a bunch of them on the page, hopefully. It gets tougher when they're in more unusual or seated positions, but really, I wouldn't worry about that right now. What you want to do is just make sure, in general, your figures are proportional. Another thing to bear in mind, I'm going to lower my arm here. My elbow should be right about at this line here, and my hand should be just below the crotch. And so that really kind of gives you all the measurements that you need to get started drawing these kinds of figures. And by now, after having done all this, drawn all these figures and measured them out, you should be a good 3 or 4 hours into your first day. If you're young and have no responsibilities, you can do this all day and you have all the time in the world. If you don't, what you want to do is really use your time strategically as possible. So you might have to take this first step and use just an hour, and then this next step and take a half an hour, and just space it out over more days. Time strategic. You should be a good 3 or 4 hours into your first day. If you're young and have no responsibilities, you can do this all day and you have all the time in the world. If you don't, what you want to do is really use your time strategically as possible. So you might have to take this first step and use just an hour, and then this next step and take a half an hour, and just space it out over more days. Over more days. Just an hour, and then this next step and take a half an hour, and just space it out over more days. Space it out over more days, and use just an hour, and then this next step and take a half an hour, and just space it out over more days. Just space it out over more days, and use just an hour, and then this next step and take a half an hour, and just space it out over more days. Almost the product was after this, and it's all in the career. It's because of you. I love what I do. I wake up every morning and I get to draw pictures, and it's because of you. So thank you very, very much. The next step from here, and this could be later in the same day after you grab some coffee and some lunch, or it can be the next day. It really depends on just how quickly you want to try and internalize all this. But you do need to bear in mind that there is only so much that you can take in one day. Your figures are probably going to look stiff, and that's slowly something that will get better as you go along. And so for the first 2 days at least, and I really recommend that you should do more like 3, this is all you should be doing. Don't worry about anything else. There's just so much to take in, and you will burn yourself out. You want to just focus on getting this stage down. It's the most important stage in drawing comics, or really any kind of illustration where you're having to create figures. Everything else branches from this. So here we are, it's day 3 already, and we have our simple figures kind of worked in, and we're gonna start with that today because everything that we do is based on this, and this is why it was so important to really just focus on this for the first couple of days. I'm just gonna get this drawn in. You'll find that these shapes get easier and easier for you to create on your own as you go. And so there's my basic figure. I've got everything I need to get started. But what I want to do now is start to establish anatomy. You think, but wait, I don't know any anatomy. I'm really not ready to do that. And you have two options. You can either start pouring through anatomy books and get it all into detail with all of these no skin anatomical drawings that can really widely vary from each other, from drawing to drawing. It can be a real hassle. What I really recommend you do is go with the Bart Sears technique. I'm looking at a Bart Sears drawing right now. Bart Sears' anatomy is very, very good, and it's very clear. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw my chest. That's going to be but just about a head high right here. And I'm looking at Bart Sears and drawing in the basic shapes that he's got. And he is very good at being able to break a figure down just in terms of very, very simple connecting shapes. And this is all you need right now. Now, my chest, that's going to be but just about a head high right here. And I'm looking at Bart Sears and drawing in the basic shapes that he's got. And he is very good at being able to break a figure down just in terms of very, very simple connecting shapes. And this is all you need right now. Now, he gets much more into detail with it in his own work, and it's absolutely beautiful, but in its basic level, I think it's really the greatest way to start getting comfortable with anatomy and using it on a figure. So my deltoid is a 3-muscle bit, and I'm just going to draw that in just like that. It connects into my chest, just like this. And you can see it in his drawings. He does it so accurately.
Zé 2000, muito obrigado, um beijo no seu coração, valeu. Valeu por ter passado, Tribuse, um beijão aí pra você também. Por hoje é só, por hoje não dá mais. Quer dizer, dá, mas Tem que fazer outras coisas. Be persistent. Be persistent. Be persistent. Um beijo. Até a próxima.